What cops find during home searches is way darker than you think. Nightmare fuel. I spent my first year as a constable in an inner-city suburb of Queensland. Now, of the population of this area, something like 40% was reserved for government-commissioned housing for rehabilitated criminals and persons released from mental health assessment centres. So there was a share of creepy stuff, but to be fair, for the most part, the people we dealt with were more like cartoon characters than really shady creeps, but they had their moments. One guy that we'd run into before just decided one afternoon to start destroying stuff in the commission set of units he lived at. He was frickin' going off, kicking through latticing, throwing pot plants off buildings at passers-by, stealing and collecting people's shoes, smashing car windows. After about 15 minutes of this mayhem, he must have run out of steam and just gone back to his unit. That's where we found him, and he decided to bung on a turn. He just would not stop screaming and bashing his head and face into any surface or object he could find. Eventually, we got a van with a pod and we secured him, then went back to the house to figure out what the frick had happened. And let me tell you, the house was an absolute cluster F. Somehow, he had fit 2 Coles trolleys inside and was using them as furniture. The whole place smelled of rotting food and crap. On the coffee table, if you could call it that, there were a series of scrawled notes of just expletives. Again, not massive mental function with this guy. And there was a wooden box too. Inside the wooden box was about 100 small clip seal bags. Over half the bags had a brown granular organic material in them, the others had clear crystal-like stuff in them. The brown bags were somewhat organized from smallest to largest samples. Now, with the kind of people we had in the area, we had all sorts of wonderful ways these people got dosed up. We were used to seeing weird stuff that people would ingest. So we don't recognize these bags, but we've got a pretty good idea it's a narcotic of some kind. So of course we examine these bags and the contents. There's enough there to test if need be, so I get one of them and empty the contents to see it better. So these samples of brown material, they've got flecks of color and little tendril-like hairs. Not unusual for a plant derivative to have. But I've never seen it before, so I'm looking at it as I hold, talking to my partner, that it might be really coarse hash derivative or a byproduct of production of something else. Cart, maybe. Might explain why this guy went nuts. A dog unit officer who assisted with the arrest comes in. He sees the scene, looks at the coffee table, looks at the bags, looks at me holding the contents of one in the palm of my hand, and straight away says, "That guy's got golden staff. He's been collecting scabs." This guy had been picking at a golden infection on his leg, collecting the scabs, organizing them into smallest to largest, and then eating them. The small yellow crystals, they were snot and crust from his nose. Same end goal. In short, I responded to a disturbance call and fondled the real-life gold member personal stash by mistake. That was messed up. I bought shares in Pure Cell hand sanitizer after that. Oh, strong start. Semi-gag already in the first story. 2 out of 10 would not read that again. If you're listening here, thank you for the views, but my god, you are sick people. Cheers, on to the next one. My very first dead guy had been in his house for almost a week during a very hot July with no air conditioning. Did you know that your skin becomes clear and you can see everything? He popped when the funeral home came to get him. Yes, popped. Some people, they're not bothered by this. Me? No. I don't have the stomach. This is the only part of the job that bothers me. I'm not a cop, but a paramedic. Went into a lady's house one time, can't remember what the call was for. She had sheets of paper taped all over the walls. They said something along the lines of, "Remember, the voices aren't real." It gave me a real warm, safe feeling, I don't mind telling you folks. That makes me sad. I work in a mental hospital. There's a lot of schizoaffective type diagnoses. It just breaks my heart how some people have to live their lives like that. This one wasn't mine, but from an EMT friend. It's also maybe not so much creepy as nasty, but it makes my hair stand on end whenever I think on it. In one of the apartments in a nearby city, the apartment manager went in to investigate a really bad smell in one of the lower units. Apparently, people all around it were complaining. Once he saw what was up, he called the ambulance. So, first responders show up, which includes said EMT friend, and there's this lady sitting on the couch. There's also something squirmy going on down below in her underpants area. So yeah, they check her out, and in the process remove said undergarments. Out falls a swarm of maggots. Yes, her lady bits were covered in them. Apparently, said individual had a fairly strong substance use problem. Some of the syringes she poked into her nethers had caused an infection. This led to rotting flesh, which attracted flies, which in turn led to maggots. The worst part is that she wasn't dead, just so dosed up that she basically never noticed that she was literally rotting and falling apart from the waist down. Sort of off topic, but one thing I can never figure out is how people like this are able to afford an IV substance habit. Since the woman sounds like a very lazy shut-in, I'm assuming it was smack. That crap is cheap when you first start using, but man, it gets expensive. It's real easy to drop $1,000 to $2,000 a week on the stuff. I'm clean now, but at one point I was a high-functioning smack addict. I still lived a normal working life, minus injecting stuff and dating a girl who was the biggest smack dealer in town, of course. She made bank dealing, but had a huge habit herself. She'd make $4,000 to $5,000 a week and then spend literally all of it on stuff just for herself. I miss that girl. I wish we both weren't addicts at the time. We had a very fun relationship, however, when you're using with your girlfriend, it starts out extremely fun, but the good times can't last forever and eventually rips the two of you apart. I skipped town and got clean. She got back together with an ex when he was released from jail and haven't heard from her in a very long time. My dad answered a domestic call from an apartment on the 23rd floor. As soon as he walked in, he saw blood everywhere. In pools on the floor, spatter on the walls and ceiling, smeared all over everything. He walked further in to find a woman crumpled on the floor beyond recognition, and the partner was standing in front of an open window. My dad started to talk to the man, to coax him into coming with, and the man immediately turned around and stepped out the window, falling 70 meters to his death. This one's from a military police friend of mine, so take it with a grain of salt. This guy was duty officer one night, and as such, he had to respond to serious events. One night there was a fire alarm, and he and a bunch of MPs rolled on it. This was a real fire. False alarms are pretty common. The source turned out to be an officer's apartment, and the officer. When the investigation was conducted, it was found that the officer had filled a bathtub with fuel and field manuals and decided to go out by sitting in the tub and igniting the fuel. After a few seconds, he decided that this was a bad idea and ran from the tub to his apartment door before the end finally took him. So the responding MPs found his charred remains and the bits of burning flesh that were falling off him as he ran for the door. Oh god, that seems like a terrible way to go. Surely that guy had access to a weapon. Why would you want to burn to death? My friend's a cop. There was a wellness check called in. He went, and the place smelled horrible. Discovered a large dead guy, shirtless, sitting in his front room in a lawn chair watching TV. He'd set up an industrial space heater behind his chair, which was on at full blast. Due to the heat and apparently other factors, he had merged through the back of that lawn chair. My husband's a surveyor for the local council and found an eerily similar thing. An old guy in a high-rise flat fell asleep on his recliner with the fireplace blazing and died in his sleep. Cue dripping remains in puddles around the footrest. Ugh. A teacher in my little town of 35,000 souls was caught doing some pretty awful crimes. In his house, the police found a fully kitted, soundproofed abduction room. Luckily, still unused. The room was windowless, soundproofed, with fresh air ducts and a reinforced lockable door, and was stocked with activities, a TV, a bed, and a porta-potty, and video surveillance equipment. Thank God they got him. At my grandparents' on vacation in Iowa. They live in the middle of nowhere, couple of elderly neighbors and cornfields for miles. It was 2 a.m. and I was going to go have a smoke before bed. Their back porch has a big sliding door. Well, I walk into the room with the sliding door, and there's a guy in a creepy rubber mask there. Like the Michael Myers one, but it was a different celebrity I couldn't place. And his eyes are jet black. He's quietly wiggling the door, trying to open it. The lock is weird and lets the door have like an inch of free play. I got so scared I felt my butthole clench up and I dropped my cigarette. Right then, the guy freezes and looks right at me. He pauses, then starts frantically shaking the door trying to open it, like this guy's trying to rip the door off the frickin' house. I run over to my grandpa's weapon cabinet and grab something, I don't know what it was, some old piece, and by the time I whipped around to point it at him, he was gone. I ran and woke up my grandparents. We all walked around the house with loaded weapons for a minute, but the guy was just kaput. A couple of weeks later, some bald guy walked out of the cornfield wearing a dress. He stood by the highway for half an hour, then got picked up by some sketchy car. I won't even go in cornfields in broad daylight anymore. Same guy? Same guy, I reckon. Well, I'd say at least he didn't seem dangerous, but honestly, the rubber mask in the middle of the night is probably the most horrifying thing you can run into. At least go for the black balaclava for a more bland, generally threatening vibe. My brother's a cop. He told me about this time when they responded to a workplace accident where a rail yard worker had been crushed between two rail cars. The guy had kind of been pressed through the ladder of one of the cars. They kept hearing voices coming from the body. Muffled voices, but definitely coming from it. It took them a while to figure out that the guy had been carrying a radio. Needless to say, they were a bit disturbed until they reached that conclusion. Yeah, we found a victim in our yard, put his head on the rail and held on with his hands. Passing freight train had neatly sliced off the top of his skull and all fingers and thumbs. He lived for a few hours afterwards in the hospital. A matter of 5 frickin' inches is the difference between ending it now and a few hours from now in horrible agony. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The guy had 3 years worth of videos he took of men of all ages using the public library bathroom. He said it was common for guys to go in there and just sort of crank it. I had no idea. He said most people had no idea they were being recorded, and others knew but just didn't care. He also had 2 external hard drives full of every kind of twisted and illegal bedroom-related filth video imaginable. Oof. A coat rack with a hat on. Clearing a dark house and seeing what could easily be a person standing motionless in the corner is not fun. As silly as it sounds, I was clearing a house, with my weapon out obviously, and rounded a corner to see a man pointing a piece right at my face. I yelled and was taking slack out of the trigger when I realized I was looking at a full-length mirror. Took a while to recover from that adrenaline dump. That's a good illustration of how the human mind can't process an entire scene at one time, and you'll focus on what's important, the barrel of the weapon, versus other details like my own face and police uniform. My house was broken into during the day while nobody was home, but luckily one of our neighbors saw the guy break in and called the cops. They showed up and checked out our house and notified us. When we first got back, we talked to the cops about the break-in and whatnot. The cop who showed up first to check the house told us when he was going into our basement, he almost had a heart attack because he thought the thief was still there, mistaking a life-sized cardboard cutout of a TV character in the corner for a real person. Abandoned houses are pretty depressing. Family pictures and albums collecting dust and decaying, sad stuff written in marker as daily reminders to start again or get off pills, look for work, make things right. All written in Spanish and seeing a sleeping mat consisting of towels and old sweaters in a corner and pizza boxes from Little Caesars next to it. Lots of stuff you see tells a story that you never asked for or expected to find. It makes me feel lucky to have what I have. Tiny, quiet little southern town. Whole family had been dead for a week. The boyfriend of one of the occupants, who she met online, was visiting from across the country. Stepdad, mother, her, and her friend, all murdered and hacked up by an ex. The mum was a professor at my university a block away, and when she didn't show up for work for a few days, the cops went to the house and talked to the perp, who gave some plausible excuse, so they left. He stayed in the house for a full week before leaving. The cops went back when the neighbors reported the smell. They caught the guy at the airport about to fly home. The fact that he stayed with the corpses for so long is what is really creepy about the whole thing. My brother-in-law's a cop. He told me about a time he and his partner were called in to do a wellness check on somebody with a terminal illness. The family didn't know where the guy was. So they get to the house, knock, and get no response. They entered the house to see if he'd passed away due to his illness, and they didn't find him there. But what they did find was a stairway leading down to a basement. In that basement was a vast number of adult toys, ropes, harnesses, you name it. There was also a stage with a bed on it, and a video camera on a tripod focused on said bed. He'd stumbled upon this guy's dungeon. The guy ended up being alive, but was visiting someone out of town and didn't notify any of his family. The creepiest? A dead guy. But not just your average dead guy. The guy had died on his couch, surrounded by no less than 1,500 Miller Lite cans. Plus, he had no friends or family. None. He was retired and his electric bill was auto-deducted from his checking account. He died on his couch and nobody had realized it for 5 months. When we found him, the top, or front really, because he was lying on his back, was completely skeletonized. But the bottom, or his back against the couch, was still meaty and rotting. The half-skeleton was kinda creepy, but it's really creepy and sad that this guy left this world and it didn't affect anyone. Just gone and forgotten. And as for the funniest, I responded to a burglary. Going through the house with the homeowners, a young married couple, documenting damage and loss. We step into the bedroom and there's a red, vibrating adult toy on the floor. They look at it, I look at it, and then we look at each other. Spend the next 5 minutes with locked eye contact talking about the broken window, missing jewelry, missing TV, everything. Everyone in the room refused to look at, discuss, or acknowledge the toy. And then we went on to the living room. Oh, and there was also the fat dead lady with the pug that had started eating her from the rear hole. Oh. Friend of a cop here. He told me about how he and his buddy went in to search an apartment. They looked around and his buddy finally called him over. A guy was just, in an oven. Dead, of course, but in an oven. When the guys tried to pull him out of said oven, all of the contents and gas of the dead guy fell right out. A few of the guys were rather ill on the spot. Not a cop, but a former corrections officer. During a cell search one time, we stumbled across a 500ml Coffee Mate container, almost full of accumulated specimen from this one guy. I was later told it took 7 months to save it up. I've seen and dealt with a lot of awful stuff, but for some reason, that one ranks up there for me. Bathtub full of dead rats in a share house of illegal workers. They'd leave traps and poison out, and when they caught the rat, they'd just add it to the pile. The whole house was disgusting. Well, in case any of you were wondering, we've now reached the point of the video where the narrator doesn't want to live on this planet anymore. So many potential launching points in this one video for that statement, but a bathtub full of dead rats finally got me there. Congratulations, inspiring achievement. My aunt is a police dispatcher. Normally she takes calls from the public and has an officer nearby respond. But one day she was asked to work the station's radio because the normal guy was sick. That meant she was acting as the central hub of the police radio network, taking calls from officers in the field and issuing backup to them, that kind of thing. She wound up having to listen to 4 cops talking back and forth in a panic as 2 squad cars arrived to check on a reported murder. The guy who was called was certain that there were multiple killers present. The victim's meat had been cut into 1-inch cubes as if their killer was going to fry them up or make kebabs. The whole corpse had been disassembled like that. Bones cut into neat inch segments, organs removed, separated, and organized. She remembers one of the officers panicked and screamed something along the lines of, "This is OCD movie monster bullcrap." I can't remember the exact quote sadly, and I doubt my aunt remembers it herself. She thought they were playing a joke on her until they called for a hazmat crew to get the body. We went into an apartment which was a local substance den. A woman we knew called and said the male renter had been attacked and she had run. We got there and the door was bolted shut. I kicked the door over and over again and it wouldn't open. What I found out later is that another team had done a search warrant on the apartment a couple of weeks earlier, and afterward the tenants had reinforced the door jamb with a metal plate. It took me a total of 22 times kicking the door before I broke the deadbolt in half, which flew across the room and hit the wall. We made entry, weapons drawn, and started clearing the apartment. The place was the kind of spooky I've only seen in places where a lot of crystal is being done. It was dark, there were Third Reich symbols, 666s, upside-down pentagrams and stuff painted on the wall, pictures of faces hung on the wall with the eyes X'd out, and dolls with their eyes scratched out into X's. As we cleared the first room, we started seeing the red. First on the bed, then a trail on the floor leading into the back room. The layout was weird. One main room, and then a back room, which was more of a hallway, and a bathroom at the end of that hall. We followed the trail of blood down the hall to the bathroom door. In the front of the door was the renter's dog, which was shaking uncontrollably and peeing all over the place, scared out of its mind. As we got closer, the pooch got really aggressive because it was scared. I made my way around the doggo and entered the bathroom where I found the renter hunched over in the shower, bleeding from his face, holding his cheeks with his hands. He was frantically trying to talk, pleading with us not to hurt his dog. Red was dripping from his mouth, and I couldn't understand him. Then I saw the extent of what had happened to him. His jaw had been dislocated on both sides, and it was just hanging there. As he was trying to plead with us, he could only attempt to talk by flicking his tongue in the pattern of the words, because his jaw didn't work at all. Oof. My mother used to work for a police department, and I'd hang out there when I'd be home sick from school. This old man used to walk to the gas station on the corner to get a pack of smokes and coffee every day. The gas station attendant called for a wellness check when she realized she hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks in the dead of summer. The cops went, knocked, smelled something, opened the door, walked in, and instantly came back, emptying their guts out from the sheer smell. They had to come back later with respirators, trash bags, and snow shovels to clean up the sludge that used to be the old guy. Another officer almost quit his first night on the job. Really bad accident. Guy shows up, the one car has nobody in it at all. He's looking around. The guy isn't on the ground anywhere. He tried to figure out if maybe the guy has walked away, so he goes to look inside for some identification. Finds the guy. He hit so hard that he slammed up under and into the dashboard, and was just a broken sack of bones stuffed in around the steering column and other parts. Gentlemen, what is the worst way an entitled admirer coped with you rejecting them? A girl at work started playing some aggressive footsie there. When I pushed her foot away and gave her a look, she went on to tell me that I'm not as attractive as I think I am and that I should start dating girls in my own league. I hate reactions like this. I don't care if I'm the ugliest guy in the world. My preferences are my own to have. If I'm not interested, then I'm not interested. Rejection sucks, but it sucks even more that people start to get personally vindictive. I know my own worth. I'd rather be alone than with someone I'm not crazy about. It's not just about me. I've hurt girls that I settled for, and I'm definitely not proud of that. As much as rejection sucks, it's better than being a placeholder until someone more suited comes along. I came home from work to find her undressed on my bed about a week after we broke up, and she went into complete denial about the breakup and for months afterward tell people we were still dating and show up at my house. I was in New York during Fleet Week, in my dress whites with my group, waiting to cross the street. Drunk girl comes up to me, grabs me, and says she's always wanted to be with a sailor. I gently stiff-arm and let her know that I'm happily married, but I point out my young single shipmate in the group. But I want you! Her friends have arrived by this point. She's told them I was being mean because I said no and started crying. The friends confronted me. It's her birthday, though. Your wife isn't even here. Just be nice. Oof, wow. Even at my drunkest, I don't think I'd ever cross a line like that. Imagine if a woman said that to your husband someday. I dated a girl for a week when I realized she just wasn't my type and I wasn't hers, so I told her we'd go our ways. Her way, however, was to stalk me for 3 years because apparently we were meant to be together for life. The highlights were making fake internet accounts of other girls I'd dated in those 3 years, and knowing frighteningly much about me and these girls while writing to me impersonating them, calling every day, and when I changed my numbers, she'd call every other person in my life that she had the number of, trying to date people I know in my life. Making weird collages of me and her on Facebook, making up fake stories of her and me, and many, many more stories. Thank God it became less and less after long, exhausting talks I had with her to make her stop, off and on again. Didn't hear from her since 2015. Oh boy, that's intense. So, I'm posting this to more or less balance out the video I made a few weeks back where the ladies got to let us have it about everything regarding man-children. And so far, I've got to say, these ladies who couldn't take no for an answer are giving the more common men who do the same thing a real contest in their disrespect for the other party's free will. So, well done there, girls. Oh wait, no, not well done. A girl in high school, out of the blue, started describing what our house would be like once we got married and had kids. I told her that I wasn't really interested, and she lost her frickin' mind. For like 2 weeks, she'd wait by the doors after school just to glare at me. She never said anything, just glared. She stalked the crap out of me, stole hair clippings and made a shrine to me in her closet. She was a real nutcase. It's been over a year, but she still seems to find me somehow. She told everyone in the office I was gay. I have no problem with gay people, so I played along. Psst, you should have told them she turned you gay. We'd dated a couple times, and I decided that while she was nice, I wasn't interested in pursuing a long-term relationship with her. I thought it would be best to let her know face-to-face rather than over text, so we did meet up for a drink in the city. I made sure we got a booth for some privacy and told her that it'd be nice, but I didn't think taking things further was going to work. She began to cry uncontrollably and very loudly demanding to know what she'd done wrong. Even from our booth, people started looking over at us. Maybe it was unfair of me to do it in public, but honestly, we'd only gone out for dinner and drinks about 4 times by that stage, so I wasn't expecting her to react so strongly. Well, mine lied to me that she had become preggo and intended to keep the kid. We'd always practiced safe bedroom fun time, but rubbers do have a non-zero failure rate, and there's no good way to tell someone who says they're pregnant that they're wrong. I took her at her word. After 3 days of her stalling on showing me any kind of proof beyond her word, she told me, "Oh, it's not going to be a problem." But I was beside myself with stress until then. Meanwhile, I'm figuring out if I need to lawyer up. I take responsibility for myself, so being a deadbeat wasn't an option, but child support was going to throw a huge wrench into my financial plans. I was in the middle of moving to a new city as well. All in all, it sucked. Near as I can tell, her goal was to inflict stress and pain. Mission accomplished, lady. One of my exes took it gracefully. We're great friends and it's never been mentioned again. One of them took it okay enough. Conversations got colder, but no baggage. One of them couldn't take no for an answer. Every conversation progressed to, "Do you want to?" or "Why don't you want to date me?" It got old quick. I tried being nice and letting her off easy, but she wouldn't stop. I cut her out of my life, but the last thing she told me was, "I'll wait for you. I'm not even good looking." A fellow male asked me over to his house to study. He put on some adult movie and asked if he could service me below the belt. I said no, and then he figured he'd ask if he could give me a down-under kiss. I rejected him and told my mum to come and get me. He persisted the whole time. Then at school, every time he saw me, he very loudly called me gay to everyone around him. I'm not into dudes, and he was definitely in the closet. Honestly, I just smiled and kept moving every time, and he eventually gave up. I think he came out 2 years later and was one of the 4 gay dudes in school in revolving relationships with each other. She called me a greedy Jew. I'm not even a Jew. Not rejected, but ended a relationship where she was clearly looking for something more serious than I was. She put on a smile, said she was disappointed, and we went our separate ways. I saw her a few weeks later in Starbucks and all hell broke loose. Started ripping me apart in line, crying while telling me I'm not a real man. I have not been back to that Starbucks since then. I met some friends at a bar event. Friends had a girl who was beyond drunk with them. Friends mentioned going back to their place. I decide to buy a burrito and go home. Girl says I should come with, and I respectfully decline. She demands I come. I decline again. Well, at least give me a goodnight kiss if you're not going to come with. I pass because I don't know her, I'm not remotely into her, and I don't want to know her. And she goes nuts. She's shrieking obscenities at me, trying to slap me from the railing she's against, just losing her mind. My friends are trying to calm her down, and I just pieced out through the kitchen of the place because I worked there. A girl who I just saw as a friend and had never flirted with started dropping really obvious "I'm in love with you" things in texts. I can't wait to go on a date with you, I can't wait to kiss you, stuff like that. I told her I wasn't interested that way, and she kept pushing until I told her I was dating someone. I wasn't. And she sent me a really angry text message and disappeared. She started dating someone and got engaged, so I thought I was home and free, until she messaged me the night before her wedding. Basically, she said she'd just started dating the other guy to make me realize how much I loved her and wanted me to save her from a marriage to this awful man. Her quote. I told her no. Then she said she had just swallowed a bottle of pills and wouldn't go to the hospital unless it was on the way to Vegas to elope. I called a mutual friend and told them what had happened and proceeded to block the crazy girl on everything. Turns out, wouldn't you know it, she hadn't swallowed a bottle of pills and was just being crazy. In short, she got engaged to make me realize she was my one true love and then threatened to Control-Alt-Delete if I didn't elope with her. I dated a girl from work. After a few dates, I didn't see it going much further, so I ended it. The girl pretty much spread around that we screwed at our workplace. We didn't. That single-handedly cost me any kind of promotion or horizontal move off of what I was doing, so I ended up changing jobs about 12 months later after every application for promotion was given to someone else, despite myself having a lot more experience and know-how with what we did. Prior to that, I was being moved around from project to project. After, I just went back to permanent night shifts. Said girl went on to get pregnant about 6 months later with someone else from work. The lesson? Don't dip your wick in company ink. Well, that's a story where you simultaneously got screwed in a literal and figurative sense, and then dodged a massive bullet with the same person. So it seems like you ticked every box on the possible outcome form other than mutual respect. Impressive range, really. Not me, but my best friend in school. She came on to him hard in public. There were about a dozen people around. He was startled and he turned her down. Then she started screaming, stamping her feet and crying. Then she told all of her friends that she'd commit self-deletion. They tried to guilt my friend with that, but he managed to shrug it off. The whole thing blew off in 3 days. High school was weird. I had a chick smell me all over, what the frick I know, grab me, try to dirty dance with me many times after I declined multiple times, tell me how promiscuous she was, and finally, after cupping my jewels, say, "Stop being a B-word," because I wouldn't F her. Weirdest frickin' person I've ever met. She later broke some stuff in the women's restroom and walked home several miles alone on foot at 4 a.m. without telling her friends. I once went on an internet double date. My friend had been internet dating this woman for a while and needed a driver to go meet her for the first time. To help convince me to drive, they arranged for one of her friends to come too. When we got to the meetup spot a few cities over, the friend just wasn't there, stuck at work. So I was forced to play third wheel, watching my friend and his girlfriend profess their love and make out. Needless to say, when that friend finally showed up, I was overjoyed. She interpreted my "thank God someone to talk to" reaction for a "oh my God, love at first sight" reaction. She got way too intense, way too quick, so I eventually let her down as easily as I could. For months afterwards, I'd get multiple emails and phone calls a day, with the craziest example being an email with our names "Together, Forever, I Love You" typed out once for every day since we'd met. She was also apparently going to my office, but luckily I wasn't there the couple of times that she did. I was on the verge of calling the cops after that stunt. Eventually, my complete lack of responses to her communication, and after blocking several of her email addresses, caused her to taper off. But I'd still get random phone calls and emails from her even years after it all happened. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Ooh, I've got one. In middle and elementary school, this weird girl took a liking to me. Followed me around at recess, wanted me to marry her when I grew up. If I wanted a recess to myself, I'd have to outrun her and lose her. She kept me in really good shape. Fast forward to high school, I landed in the same film arts class as her. I'd often be out filming interviews and short films around the school, but when I was in the editing room, there she'd be, ogling me from across the room, inching her chair closer and closer, and complimenting me on virtually everything from my hair to clothes to jewelry. I was a socially awkward teenager, and I didn't explicitly tell her no as soon as I should have. She reached out to me on Facebook a few times asking if I'd consider dating her, and that's when I said, "I have no doubt you'll find the one, but it's not me." I'm pretty sure that's when the stalking started. It all started when I was biking to school one day and saw her leaning up against a telephone pole at the end of my street, staring at me as if she was expecting me. She lives quite far away from me. I used to live on her street in elementary school, so I knew. So I think she must have followed me home, then gotten up at the crack of dawn and figured out when I'd be leaving for school. This happened more than once. Fast forward to the present day, she seems to have figured out what routes I take home from work, and sometimes I'll be biking to work or home from work, and she'll be standing at an intersection, again, staring at me as if she's expecting me to come that way. She messaged me again a few weeks ago, asking if I'd date her, and I gave her a very clear rejection. Hopefully, this time it sticks. I'm just really, really glad she doesn't know where I live. I rejected 3 different girls in a 2-month span, and all 3 asked, "What, are you gay?" "No." "So I'm ugly?" I didn't say that. Word for word, every incident. One of them was kind of fugly, though. She cried and was wailing and asking if it was because she was ugly or her weird nose in public. I told her it wasn't and that it was me. I used to think I wasn't shallow, but her nose was Mount Everest and Uncanny Valley at the same time. She later said I slapped my member on her nose to get off. I did not have relations with that nose. Oh, this story comes courtesy of my best friend. He broke up with his psychotic girlfriend, so I went over to be supportive and I ended up calling a female friend over that I knew liked him, and I left. Around 3 a.m. he calls me to tell me his ex tried crawling through the dog door to get into his house. Somehow since then she's manipulated him into getting back with her, and she's still that psychotic. Rejected a girl that I barely knew, who then started screaming that she was going to not be alive anymore if we weren't together. I felt bad for her, but pro tip for you ladies that think this is a winning strategy, it kinda makes people want to date you less. She proceeds to get on the ground and writhe around saying she's having a panic attack and that she could die from it. I almost laugh at how fake it all is. I mean, she gently sits down during her fall and then positions herself carefully and stops moving. But a group of people come by and, quote, rescue her. We were outside a campus. She goes to hospital and obviously the doctors find there's nothing wrong with her, but she claims they just couldn't spot it. She started spreading the word on how she nearly died from the cruel mocking and verbal bullying I threw at her, and how when she was dying in the streets from a severe panic attack, I just cruelly laughed and walked away. I don't think a lot of people bought her story, but I never really saw her again, so it just kind of disappeared on its own. Oh, mine gave me the standard stuff. She spread rumors that I was gay, spread rumors that I had a tiny member, spread rumors that I had dysfunctional ding-dong. All the same woman. She still hates me over a decade later. She asked me to prom. I told her I wasn't planning on going because I wasn't interested. Told her I had to work anyway. She asked for a few days to change my work schedule so I could go. I politely declined and she understood. I was shy and didn't know how to handle an attractive 15-year-old, I was 13 at the time, coming up to me and giggling with her friend, and I thought I was just being made fun of again, so I turned her down. They broke down in tears, and for the next 3 years I was bullied by those 2 years older than me in high school. She stalked me for 19 months, tried to hit me with a car, tried to shoot me, tried to shank me, wrote my mum a letter and signed it with her blood, wrote me a letter and did the same thing, and told all my friends that I'd committed the unspeakable act on her. A few of them actually believed her, which just mystified me. On the positive side, I learned how to get a restraining order, a weapon permit, and concealed carry permit. I even learned you can then get them at the same office from people who work at desks right next to each other. Pro tip, when they ask you why you need a restraining order and a firearm permit, don't say, because if one doesn't work, the other will. They have no sense of humor in that office. Oh boy, that joke was one heck of a gamble to take when you were faced with someone who it sounds like was literally out for your blood. Good on you for maintaining a sense of humor against adversity, though. I broke up with this girl and she didn't want to. She tried to talk me out of it and then tried to commit the unspeakable act against me by pinning my hands with her knees and trying to take my pants off. Being bigger and stronger, I just stood up and dumped her on the floor. I never thought about the unspeakable act the same way after that. One time later, her other ex, my best friend, was visiting and she came over. Things seemed to be going okay when all of a sudden she leapt up in the air and tried to come down on my chest with her knees like some kind of wrestling move. I was so mad I literally threw her out my front door and told her to get the F out of my life. Turns out she was jealous of our friendship. I don't think I ever saw her again, and for the record, the stuff in the bedroom was good. You know what they say. Pulled a knife on me, like a kitchen knife, in the middle of school. I feared for my life. She swung at me a few times and gashed my cheek. Then she started slashing at herself before teachers apprehended her. She was screaming the whole time as well. And people wonder why I don't like Doki Doki Literature Club. This was a bit of a double-edged sword, but 2 girls in college, different times. The first one had a crush on me and her ex, and I helped her through everything. I wasn't opposed to doing the deed with her, but I never pushed for it. She made it her goal to make me feel as jealous as possible around other guys. Maybe a year later, she finally asked me to spend the night with her. I was a little baked, and after the weird bedroom activities, she passed out and started snoring. I felt weird as F laying in a bed, blazed and awake, so I decided to leave. The next day, she texted me really angrily, as expected, and ignored me for a few weeks. Maybe a month later, she posted a picture of an ultrasound and tagged me in it. Messaged me back a few hours later saying it was a joke and her mum had called her crying. That's why she told me. The second girl had BPD, but was calm and interesting enough to pursue. She asked me to go to clubs and bars with her and then made out with other guys while there, even though she said we were kind of dating. Whenever she wanted away from a particular guy, she'd come and find me and start making out with me. I still gave her the benefit of the doubt for 2 months until she straight up made me catch her with her ex. These are 2 girls who both want to date me and made elaborate schemes to exact some sort of revenge? ? I've stayed away from those types for years now. My ex-girlfriend broke up with me. Fine. 1 month later, I asked us to go back together and she refused. 3 months later, I found a new girlfriend. Everything was fine. A few months later, my ex goes inside my college and asks me to go back. I refused. She threw a tantrum in the middle of the students. Everyone looked at me. She basically said that I'm a son of a witch for not wanting her back. I never saw her again, luckily. We only dated for 3 months and I decided to break it off because she was really suffocating me and trying to control every aspect of my life, including that we should just go down to the courthouse and get married. Yikes. When I broke it off, all was quiet for a few hours and I was like, guess it wasn't so bad after all. But I was wrong. So wrong. She proceeded in an hour to send me about 150 texts. She said she was going to bring it. I blocked the number and then got messages on a different app and was able to block that too. Then the Facebook barrage. Hundreds of angry, threatening messages regarding me, my apartment, and my cat. Insisting I was breaking her. Going into the relationship, I told her it takes me a while to connect with people, and even so, most people aren't head over heels after 3 months. She said she was going to Control-Alt-Delete herself and that it was my fault. I called her bluff, she got really mad, and then I blocked her. She tried adding all of my family members and friends on Facebook. People started contacting me asking me if I was okay because she was posting threats on Facebook. She said she'd reveal my secrets, but she only knew some could be considered kind of embarrassing things about me that honestly anyone who knows me already knew. I had to barricade my door that night, change the locks the next day, and tell my work she was coming onto the campus. I like to stream drawing sometimes, and she found my livestream profile and spammed the chat with messages about ending things and how I ruined her life. But the glory of being a moderator for my own stream was that I could boot her. She emailed me a year later expecting sympathy because her kids had had enough of her crap too. I still have a hard time getting myself to date again, to be honest. She cried a lot, but we're still friends. We're adults. Me and this Irish chick hooked up. We had a few great nights railing each other's brains out. Come the following week, we play it off at work like nothing ever happened. About 2 weeks after that, we're effing and essing each other silly after work. I realized after a month that our 20-year age difference was going to lead us nowhere together. I broke it to her, and she walked to the site parking lot and burned my pickup truck to the ground. Not even the aluminium rims survived that. She was arrested for arson. I laid no charges against her and got a new truck thanks to insurance. I know not all redheads are psycho, but this one sure was. What should we know about the secret lives of hotel workers? So your reviews are actually seriously listened to, at every property that I've ever worked at except for a super crappy one. If an employee's name is mentioned negatively in an online review, that isn't necessarily grounds for a write-up, but it's definitely a fast track there. Most properties watch their online reviews like hawks. With almost any situation, unless you're speaking with a manager or someone high up the chain of command, you're a lot more likely to get what you want if you're being nice rather than rude. We're talking reasonable things, of course, like high floor with a good view, parking, food charges being removed, little things like that. I really wish people understood how detailed the pay-per-view TV systems are. Oh, you want to dispute that $15 charge because you didn't even watch it? Let me see. Oh yes, you ordered Debbie Does Dallas and watched for 35 minutes the first time, and then 17 minutes the second time. I was thankful for this. I was on a business trip looking through the titles, along with notices, titles won't appear on bill. I accidentally ordered The Enron Story. I shut it off immediately, called front desk, didn't want to hand HR my hotel bill with movie rented and name withheld. For a fricking movie about Enron. The hotel took it off my bill. Look, we know you're cheating on your wife. Don't get me wrong, we don't care, but don't bother making up a backstory when you're paying in cash once to twice a week in the town you live in. But that Toastmasters convention meets every week in this city, and wouldn't you know it, I always max out my credit card. I work overnight in a small-ish hotel, 430 rooms, which means that between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. I'm alone at the desk. I wish more people were considerate to the fact that when I tell you I can't run up to bring you whatever you've called down for because I'm the only person on duty and can't leave the desk, you'll need to come down and get it. I'm not just being lazy. I've got a lot of arrivals, most of them come in between 11 and 1, or someone might be at the desk checking in or asking a question or buying something from the gift shop, or there's something else ridiculous going on that I'm taking care of. This doesn't mean I'll always say no, but when I do, I'm actually busy. That Expedia takes a 25% cut. We'd much rather have you go with Booking.com, which is 15%, or even better, contact us directly. I gave up trying to call directly because not once in over a dozen times was any hotel even able to match the Booking.com rate. Apparently they'd rather lose money than compete with their own online rates. Yes, this is indeed a problem. And the front desk staff either seem unwilling or unable to do anything about it. Surely someone booking at a low rate is better than booking at a lower rate, and then losing 25% of that lower rate. Still, you guys are overworked and I get it. This video is not sponsored by Expedia or Bookings.com, by the way. It's scary for us knowing how our reputation on TripAdvisor can be the life or death of us, especially to a small hostel or hotel, when a lot of the reviewers can just be drunk idiots or someone having a bad day and taking it out on the establishment. My girlfriend, who works in a relatively small place, recently got trashed in a TripAdvisor review. A customer got angry at another front desk girl. My girlfriend wasn't even on duty that night, but the reviewer didn't even know her name, so my girlfriend being the only person whose name he did know, she was the one who got crapped on in the review instead. Luckily, the manager knows this, so she didn't get in any trouble at work, but it sucks so bad that she now has a permanent record online, and everyone who reads the review and visits the hostel will instantly connect it to her since it's such a small place. You can't really ask the site or the customer to remove the review either, since it would just look like you want to compromise the integrity of the reviews. I've had myself mentioned in a few reviews, but luckily never anything slanderous, and the only bad one I've read was, "That guy never smiles," which some days I probably deserve, I guess. Look, I don't have secret rooms in the back that I keep just for high-tier guests. If I'm sold out, I'm sold out. This is something I don't understand. I get last-minute planning, but trying to find a place in town between one state and another, in a busy city, especially on a weekend or holiday, what do you expect? I'm sorry that I'm sold out, and so are the other hotels you tried. This is why you should call ahead. Being spontaneous doesn't always turn out the way you want. But it's me, I'm important. People should know that we need a credit card for incidentals before we give you the keys to a room. If we can't guarantee payment, you won't get your keys. Safety is a big concern. Walking up to me and giving your name and asking for a key to a room that is under your wife's name just isn't going to fly. I've never met you. I don't know who your wife is. There's no key for you. Don't get angry at me. Next time, put both your names on the reservation. Getting a late checkout is a privilege. Housekeeping works really hard, so we have to make sure that they leave at the time they're supposed to. I can allow some rooms to have a late checkout, but after a certain number, I do have to cut it off and respect my coworkers. First come, first served. If you have to have an early check-in because you're going to a wedding and you need to change or do your makeup or take pictures, etc., that's nice, and I'm happy to do what I can. I'm less happy if you're demanding and rude about it. It all really depends on what our occupancy was the night before and if housekeeping has cleaned a room for you. If nobody has left and you're trying to check in at 9 a.m. when checkout for last night's guests is at 11 a.m. and your guaranteed check-in time is 3 p.m., there is literally nothing I can do to help you except direct you to the lobby restrooms to change. If you need it that early, then book the room for the night before as well. And if a room's ready, of course I'll check you in. I like weddings and I want you to have fun. And I get kickbacks from the restaurant I recommended you to go to. Yes, the food is good, so it's an honest recommendation, but yeah, there's a reason I always say them. That's all I can think of for now. Maybe more later. The things I can't pull out of my butt? A clean room? My property manager? Please, if I say one or both are unavailable, please accept that as God's honest truth. Look, folks, housekeeping works their butts off. We had a high turnover one Saturday, and they asked people to come in and help strip rooms, like take all the sheets off and put them in bags with the towels to be cleaned, to make it quicker for the housekeeping to get the cleaning done. I work in conference sales and services, but I went in on my day off to help. Oh my God, I wanted to cry within an hour. I was sweaty, tired, and even with gloves, I just felt gross. My whole body was sore. We were literally doing such a small part of what housekeeping does every single day. Even as hotel employees for many years now, I truly had no idea. Tip your housekeepers, please. They work so hard. Some other things. If you're a jerk, it will be added to the comments on your reservation, and every time someone in the front desk or concierge pulls you up, they'll get a nice little warning about how you treated someone else. Anyone who has access to the rooms program, whether it's Opera or God Help You V1, can see your entire history with that resort or hotel. We get people who try to lie about their past rates all the time, and reservation tracks every time you call with notes, so when you call back to try and scam or lie to the next agent, they know. At my previous resort, I know a few people would also Google map the homes of guests who were very wealthy just to ooh and ah, or if they were jerks to find something to mock about their houses. Lots of Googling and looking up LinkedIn profiles of guests. Oh my goodness, housekeeping. I have so much respect for them. I tried it when I was just out of high school. I just couldn't get the rhythm and the time management right. Not to mention the pure physical aspect of the job. I was done within a month. It's grueling, and some people can be so disrespectful, and the staff that can do that job in a timely manner are just magicians. I always write a little thank you note and tip when I stay somewhere because of this very short experience. I ran the bell desk at a hotel on the Strip. Nobody ever goes through your belongings, ever. Guests blame the bell person because they take their items into the back room for them. Those people usually just misplace their items and blame my team member who helped them. But after looking at a surveillance video and seeing nothing out of the ordinary, that usually prompts people to take a closer look, and they usually find what they'd misplaced. And I don't suppose that a lot of these guests would let you know or apologize once you find the item that they've misplaced. I must admit that I've neglected to apologize before, and I'm not proud. I hope I'd have the strength of character to do it these days. We do not care what you're doing unless it's illegal or annoying. A lot of rules aren't set in stone in the right situation. Last week, a snowstorm caused a bunch of accidents that actually made it impossible to get to our hotel because of road closures. People who called and asked were given refunds because of the circumstances, but people who didn't call weren't. We keep extensive notes on you. Occupation, kids, anything we can use to tailor our interactions specifically to you. We also keep extensive notes on every jerk thing you've ever done. If you screamed at me or my coworker, I'm writing a long note in your profile while you're still yelling at me. Then when you try to spin it in your post-stay survey, I can point my manager to the detailed and objective note I wrote about why you're a butthole. We also put in the nice things about you. I can only grant so many late checkouts without screwing over the entire housekeeping department. Ask at check-in, not 5 minutes before check-out. And don't be aghast when I tell you no. Frickin' ask for things. Is the bed too soft? We have bedboards. Is the toilet too high? We have cushions. Need a little more shampoo? We have literally thousands of them. But we don't know you need those things unless you ask us. End of rant. Hotels overbook as a policy. I guess there's a known statistic that X% of guests won't show up, and it's true 99.9% of the time. So show up to your hotel ASAP to ensure that you get your room. Also, the hotel is full of people who expect to be treated like they're the only person in the universe. If someone's taking a long time to get something done, it probably means someone stopped them. There's no reason a hotel employee is going to annoy a guest on purpose because they don't know how many days they're going to have to deal with you. Your first point is exactly why people should never book third party, and always make sure you make a deposit or prepay. People who've paid already are always the first to get upgraded when their room type is oversold, and third-party reservations just tend to disappear. Sometimes they just don't come through due to system error or a fault of said third party. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. No, we do not store personal info inside of your keys. Idiots. Good God, the number of times I got asked this, or better yet, the number of times I was taught this by a guest who definitely knew our key system better than me, those same guests always refused to turn in the cards at checkout for fear of relinquishing all of their information to our team of hackers. If you give it back, I'll almost immediately wipe it and use it for another room. If you don't, great. We only have about 627,000 more cheap plastic cards in the back. If a guest service rep answers the phone while checking you in, it's not rude, it's because she or he will likely be disciplined for letting the phone ring more than 3 times. We wash the duvets every month and only wash curtains every quarter. So if someone pees on the bed, we'll clean it and then lay it out in the sun to air it out and kill the bacteria. In some states, we're required to enter your room once a week, and if you don't want housekeeping to assume your change as a tip, please don't leave it on the nightstand. Just because you're the Ultra Platinum member and requested an upgrade doesn't mean that you'll get it. We're not kicking someone else out of a room that they booked. We can't guarantee it until day of check-in. Also, we only upgrade to the next level, so if you book a queen, we'll upgrade to a king. A king, you might get a suite, but there are some room types we don't upgrade to. Expedia and similar sites are rip-offs. They charge you the same rate and they pay $20 less, but you can't cancel or get a refund. And if something goes wrong, we can't discount your room, so there's no way to make it right. If your card declines or we need you to come to the front desk for any reason, we'll lock you out but play dumb when you come to the front desk to get new keys. Also, late checkout is based on availability and only until check-in time, 3 p.m. at most places. If housekeeping will still be here, we can do it, but if housekeeping will be leaving at 1 and you want to check out at 2, we're not going to pay people to sit around for an hour waiting on you to leave. Also, if you come in a group, like a team, it's so much easier if you hand us a copy of the rooming list, instead of us asking individual people who's staying in what room. I worked for 7 years as a front desk manager and a summer in housekeeping, so if I think of anything else, I'll update. That despite night audit, the third shift, being pretty slow, I do have actual work that I need to be doing, and I'm not just sitting on my butt the whole time in between noise complaints and getting people towels or plunging their toilets when the houseman is busy. Please keep in mind that most hotels are pretty understaffed and at 3 a.m. I'm going to be the only one here, so if you have any issues, they're going to be resolved once the GM or housekeeping or maintenance arrives much later if I can't fix them. I work in a hostel. Like mentioned above, the housekeeping does an amazing job. I wish people would realize we're not trying to make their stay miserable, we're not out to get them, we're doing whatever we can with the limited means we have. If the boiler is out of hot water because too many people shower, what exactly do you want me to do about it? We get a lot of backpackers here who are generally a bit more laid back than your typical high-end hotel guest. but even then, some can be a right pain. If I say we only have dorm rooms, then don't come to reception after having paid to complain that there's no ensuite bathroom and you don't have the room to yourself. Employees can see where you work. If you do something terrible, they could contact your employer, especially if you're using your employer's name for a special rate. One time there was a guy who stayed at our property a lot and liked to look through windows at people and otherwise be creepy. We had to call his company and let them know he wasn't welcome at our property anymore. I'm pretty sure they fired him. Housekeeping literally cleans with professional-grade black lights at my property. We can tell if you try to clean your number 2 off the walls because it glows red. And, well, there are many colors that mean many things, and we know how freaky you can be. The narrator is just so very curious, but also simultaneously sure that he definitely doesn't want to know what any of this mystical rainbow of hues might be. Well, at least we know that poop is red. There's no standard way that all hotels do things. Just because another hotel does it that way doesn't mean we do. And if the staff are grumpy, it's usually because of the way management treat them. Hotels have a tendency to overwork and underpay their staff, and it's hard to appear happy when you're made to feel like a worthless piece of crap. The same goes for housekeeping. I see a lot of reviews that are like, the cleaners need to be taught how to clean properly. Trust me, they know how to clean, they just don't have enough time. They have a lot of rooms to get done and not enough time to do it. And if they can't keep up, they won't last long. Professional cleaning is a very different thing from home cleaning. If you're a jerk to a hotel employee, there's a good chance that they're going to go into the back office and talk crap about how rude you were, and the rest of the staff will groan whenever they see your name pop up on our caller ID for the rest of your stay. I only manage a small division of the front office at a large property, and I promise you that the way you treat my staff determines your whole stay. If you're extra nice to my bellman and it's your birthday, have some free champagne. If you're extra rude and it's your birthday, I'll make sure I inconvenience you any way that I can without it impacting our reviews. As a night auditor at a hotel smaller than 100 rooms, I'm the only person on the premises. My hotel isn't a full-service hotel, and unfortunately I'm required to stay at the front desk during my first few hours in case there's any stragglers checking in or someone locking themselves out. If you need extra towels, blankets, or pillows, I'm more than happy to give them to you. However, I'll need you to come to the desk. I know it sucks, but we're a high-traffic area, and I hate having an angry arrival who assumes I'm just sitting in the back. Plus, the owners see and hear everything, even from home. Please be advised that when you're placed on hold for a long time between the hours of 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., it's because people are checking in and I'm the only person at the desk. I have to take care of the guests in front of me before I can take calls, so hanging up and calling back to complain about being on hold for too long is not going to make me do my job any faster. In fact, I'll end up messing up more often if I'm too overwhelmed with 2 guests coming in and 3 phone calls on hold. One more thing, the breakfast hostess also works by herself even when we're sold out. If you don't like something or can't eat something, don't be rude about it. We don't know what your dietary restrictions are, and we try to serve a little bit of everything. In short, try to be understanding of the humans that work in hospitality. We really do want to make you feel welcomed, but we can't do everything. Even if it's not work-related, a lot of people do travel for business and use the same rewards number. If you use that rewards number, it shows your business. If you don't use any of that, yet still do something truly awful, they've already got your name, address, CC number. Most hotels ask for ID and CC and phone number upon arrival. They enter all of that info into their computer base. They can find you. People working at the buffet at breakfast cook with 1 microwave. I'm sorry that the eggs, sausage, and biscuits ran out right at the same time. The eggs have been cooking in the microwave for about 5 minutes, and it'll be about another 20 before everything gets refilled. Literally nothing we can do about that. Not working there anymore, thank God. Oh my God, yes. This was my first job, and while it was easy and laid back, we were given 2 tiny ovens, they were glorified microwaves, to cook everything. Also, with the area we were in with our clientele, it was about 50% Asian, and for some reason, most of them like to grab large amounts of everything, take 1 bite, and throw the rest away. Even with the ovens full at all times, we'd still run out and get screamed at. As if the nasty turkey sausage and pre-cooked eggs were worth screaming at someone over. I don't miss that job. Check-in time is pretty standard throughout the whole of the US, and just because this is Alaska, it doesn't mean I don't know you're trying to get one over on me. This will also make me give you the last room available depending on your attitude. Also, I know you don't want to listen to my welcome spiel, and I know this means you actually don't, which is why you'll call to the desk and ask many questions, all of which we answered at the very beginning. If you call the hotel directly, you get to have an easier time with your reservations. Booking through a third party might seem more convenient for you, but with the extra fees and everything, you end up paying as much or even more as if you'd booked directly through the hotel. And if you need to change anything about your reservation, the date of arrival, length of stay, you have to call them, since we can't really adjust that stuff due to contractual obligations with the third parties. And believe me when I say it can be a freaking nightmare dealing with third parties on the phone. One guy sat in the lobby, angry and annoyed, on hold with one of the third-party booking agencies for 45 minutes. You're going to get better deals if you call the hotel. The hotel gets more money out of it since we have to share whatever you pay with the booking agent, and in general it's just more convenient for everyone involved. Yes, you have to have some human interaction time on the phone, but for frick's sake, we want to sell you the room. We used to allocate the rooms for the remainder of the day and would usually upgrade our regulars, or would put the one-nighters in a slightly better room as we tended to sell the standard rooms to walk-ins. Plain and simple, if you're a jerk to me and I noticed you had been allocated a better room, I'd change that crap. Also, if you're complaining to reception about something, just tell them what you want rather than making a big fricking deal and throwing a tantrum during checkout. If you want free breakfast or free parking or an upgrade, just say so. Oh my god, there's a lot to get off my chest, this could take a while. We don't care why you're here, you don't have to pretend that working girl is your wife, just pay for the room and go away. Most of us are very underpaid. If we say we're sold out, there's a good chance we're lying. Those email surveys you get asking how your stay was, at my property every single employee sees them, so please be nice before you say something like, the fat witch who checked me in was rude, or the gay guy at the bar made my drink too weak. It's just rude and puts you on that person's crap list for the next time you stay. Also, we know a lot about you. My hotel has very detailed profiles listing your likes, dislikes, and any problems you've had with any employees. Not just at my hotel, but any one of our properties. We color code guest reservations in our computer. Black for a problem guest, blue for celebrities, etc. And the colors will stay on your profile unless we change it. So if you were a total witch to a waitress in 2004, you're blacklisted. And you'll stay blacklisted forever most likely. So every employee you meet knows you were a witch once and acts accordingly. Managers, what's the record you have for fastest firing and why did it happen? Oh, this one was about an hour. The kid was a temp hire and we set him up at his job, showed him what to do and turned him loose. There was a can of degreaser sitting with the machine that he was operating. I came into my office and sat down, looked up and just watched him pick up a shop rag, spray a whole bunch of degreaser into it, and then he pushed it into his face and started huffing. Deeply. I sighed, got up, went over to him and said, "Come on, son," and walked him to the door. I asked the temp agency to please attempt to vet their applicants a little better in the future. I watched my supervisor fire someone on the first day. Most of the new hires are actually middle-aged women. 90% of them are awesome, but a lot of them feel super entitled because they're middle-aged. It didn't help that I was only 23 as well. Anyway, our new hire's first day of work, she seemed okay. Doesn't make too much of an effort with the kids. It's not that abnormal, I guess it takes some time to get comfortable with other people's kids. So we change diapers on a schedule here, unless they poop or obviously need a change. I've changed a couple of diapers already, and I noticed she doesn't lift a finger if the kids need a change. 10 a.m. rolls around, which is when we change every kid. So I ask her to help me. She seems surprised and goes, "Oh, I don't change diapers, honey." Yep, this lady refused to change diapers. She took a job caring for babies. She was fired maybe an hour later. Daycare workers, oh my god. My wife worked in daycare for 4 or 5 years, so I've had to listen to the stories. The amount of bullcrap that goes on is ridiculous. At least your supervisor fired them. My wife's boss would have just shrugged it off as for some reason all of her bosses were way too nice and never wanted to fire anyone. She always had some part-time teen or early 20-year-olds that were there to make some money doing nothing while going to school. Those kids never contributed and never got fired either. I managed a gas station for a while. I hired this guy who seemed completely normal, which was hard to come by, so I had him start the next day. After about 30 minutes of working, he says he needs a break. No big deal, something must have come up. Maybe 10 minutes later, a customer came in saying that there was a guy passed out in the men's restroom. I sent another guy working into the restroom, and the guy that I'd just hired was undressed and completely unresponsive. The paramedics came and turns out he had taken way too much smack. He had survived, but I still never got an answer on why he was undressed. Hired a kid to work opening shifts at a local pool. We were short-staffed, so he was learning the ropes with me on a 5 a.m. shift. As we opened, he asked if he could take a quick cup of coffee. I agreed, asking him to make me one. Around 5 minutes later, a swimmer comes up to me and said she saw my lifeguard snorting something. I was obviously angry and went to see what was going down. I went up to the window and saw him doing another line. After a short argument, he finally decided to just leave and not make me substance test him. lasted a whole 10 minutes of us being open. Oh boy, what do you even tell your parents you got fired for? And I have to hope that kid meant at least in his mid to late teens if he was using substances, oh god. Although someone that age needing coffee is also a bit of a mind screw for me. Dude got hired as a waiter, and halfway into his first shift, he was falling down drunk. I pulled him into the kitchen and said, "Dude, you're fired." Not that I was firing him, just an observation. I was a little taken aback and not really thinking about what I was saying. The owner heard me and reprimanded me, "You don't have the authority to fire anyone," and then immediately fired the guy. She didn't even make it through the office tour. We hire a lot of seasonal workers, and last year we had a girl with one of the legit small particles of peanut dust will kill her dead peanut allergies. So we put up a few reminder signs, had some peanut-free dishes and forks in the kitchen, that kind of stuff. This new girl started a few weeks after the rest of the group, and when I was showing her around, she pointed to the signs and asked sarcastically if we were serious. She looked genuinely surprised when I said they were real serious, and then smirked and said, "You actually believe someone can die from peanuts?" And followed it up with the usual things like, "Stuff like that isn't real, you'll see." I asked a few questions to make sure she wasn't trying to make a terrible joke, and then went full manager speak and asked if she'd be able to follow the rules to keep her co-workers safe. And when it was obvious she was serious, I told her she was done for the day and she could head home. I didn't actually have hiring and firing powers, so I was a little worried when I took it to our boss. If she denied it, it would be her word against mine. Fortunately, when my boss took her aside to ask what happened, she replied, "Oh, they were getting all weird about someone who was pretending to have one of those fake peanut allergies." From what I hear, she was completely, genuinely shocked when she was fired. I had a bartender who lost money her first shift by herself. The draw started with $200, came back with $140. She'd worked 6 hours and didn't have many credit card tips or anything, so she somehow managed to spend all of her tips and $60 without leaving the building. Yeah, fired. One week I got a call from the county jail because this girl I'd just hired had been arrested, and she refused to give any info to the police except for the fact that she'd worked for this particular store. They called me, trying to figure out her info and a person to contact about her arrest. I told them I couldn't give that info out, but I would call her emergency contact to let them know that she was in jail. I called this girl's emergency contact, who was her mother, and told the mum that her daughter was currently sitting in the slammer. All the mother said was, "Figures," and she hung up on me. After she was released from jail, about 2 days later she ended up in the hospital from alcohol poisoning. So yeah, I had to let her go. The worst part was that I actually liked her. Wide open call center desk farm. The dude on his first day fires up the naughty movies on his PC with sound. Bold move. I worked in IT in the early 2000s. One day there was an MP3 being emailed around offices. It started out real quiet, and I think it was a comedian telling a joke. The email basically said, "This is hilarious, but you need to turn it up to hear it." After about 20 or 30 seconds, it suddenly yelled, "Hey everybody, I'm watching smut over here!" and a bunch of noises from a couple having very naughty whoopee. When I was out at some restaurant for lunch that day, I heard at least 3 tables talking about someone who fell for it. It wasn't much of an interview. He had the right skills, and I needed someone with those skills the next day on the job. So anyway, he shows up late on his first day, then proceeds to make offensive and racist remarks to coworkers and the clients. 2 hours. He was good at his actual job, but I wasn't going to submit my employees and especially my clients to that bullcrap. Ooh, he was on something and out of his head. Screamed at me to stop yelling at him. I wasn't speaking. I had to let some poor kid go after 30 minutes. He didn't want to quit because it was his first job, and he bought scrubs entirely for this occasion, but he was clearly in over his head the second he started his orientation. To my own credit, he interviewed like a champ, and some people are just really good at saying all the right things. I asked if he'd feel better if he was fired, my intention being to remind him the fired is a bad thing, so if he doesn't think he can hang, he should quit on his own terms. He said yes, so I fired him. He shook my hand and told me I had nice eyebrows, and he left. The next day he emailed me to let me know he was quitting. I told him there were no hard feelings since he was already fired. I've now learned to ask every phlebotomist applicant if they're comfortable being exposed to blood. Fricking thanks, Connor. I mean, I'm a pharmacy technician and you'd be amazed at the number of job applicants surprised that you have to pass a substance test. Sure, I could test the substances. What substances do you need me to test? There was this one employee I'd given a warning about not pulling his weight at 8:45 a.m. At 9:30, my team informs me that he just announced in their 9 o'clock meeting that he's taking a week-long vacation, starting the next day. 9:35, he's nowhere to be found when I'm looking for him to see if they misheard about the impromptu vacation that he failed to run by me. He shows back up at 10 o'clock, confirms he decided he needed a vacation while in the 9 o'clock meeting. I hope it was a nice vacation because he lost his job over it. Not me, but I had a friend who supervised a movie theater. They hire this kid. First day, first showing of that day, he lets 20 people in and follows them in himself. He thought no one would notice that he and his friends were partying while watching a movie that he'd closed the sales to so that they'd have the rooms to themselves. She showed up on her first day strung out on something. She was really angry when I sent her home and told me I was going to make her lose her children since the judges said she had to have this job. Complete BS since she was hired for the holidays. It didn't stop me from being scared for the next few weeks. That woman looked like she wanted to hurt me. A former coworker of mine was fired from our inbound customer service rep job during our second on-the-phone shift because he shouted at a customer, "My God, are you fricking stupid?" He says he forgot to hit mute. Look, I'm going to say in this person's defense, I do get it. I'm on your side for wanting to shout that when you're working in customer service, but I do also understand why you got fired, and hopefully, so do you. Hired this big Michael Clark Duncan-looking guy who claimed he had experience in a kitchen, had some higher-end stuff on his resume, and talked the talk well. Nobody could get a hold of his references, but we were short-staffed and needed a body, and he'd interviewed really well. So, cut to his first day. The man had no clue at all on any of the big kitchen basics, and we started questioning our decision. But we figure maybe he's nervous or hungover. It is a kitchen after all, so we let it ride another day. Day 2, he comes in and starts prepping. I'm keeping half an eye on him. I see him grab some potatoes for soup. The next thing you know, he mutters about the chef's knife being dull, and instead of sharpening it with the whetstone on hand, or even using a steel, he grabs a 10-inch flexible boning knife and starts wobbling and forcing his way through a large russet. It's not going well. I pipe up, "Hey, that's the wrong tool for the job. What the hell are you doing?" He says, "Nah, man, I got this." As I try protesting again to tell him, "No, seriously, you're going to bleed," I see the potato roll out of his grip and the knife spring off the side of it and sink itself into his left hand and out the back side of the same hand. I'd never seen a black dude go pale before that day, but he sure did. I then proceeded to tell him we were going to go to the hospital, to leave it in and I'll grab the towel. The guy, naturally, yanks the blade out of his hand and covers my prep table, slicer, and wall with blood in the process. I handed him the towel, he wraps up and tells me he's good to drive to the hospital and would be back as soon as he could. I told him he didn't need to come back until the next day to pick up his paycheck. He freaks out and I have to call him on his BS and list about a dozen unsafe or unhygienic practices that are enough to cause me to let him go, let alone the fact that he just stuck a knife through his frickin' hand after being told not to use it. You can lie your way into a lot of jobs, but you can't lie your way into a kitchen. In short, I fired a guy on his second day for ramming a boning knife through his hand like a dummy, after trying to cut potatoes with it and being told that it was the wrong tool for the job. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had to tell someone on their first day of a tech support training class to click on the big blue E. She was gone at lunch break. One guy that got hired at the same time as me at the movie theater got fired the next day. He'd stand around in the halls, and when it was time to clean the theater, he'd disappear and hide in the bathroom to avoid working. This guy grabs a candy bar, opened it, and started eating it while waiting for the interview. Manager noticed and asked the guy if he paid for it. He said no, and the manager told him to pay and then to F off. My job recently hired a woman to work at our restaurant, and she got fired within 2 days due to her inappropriate advances on other staff members. We believe she had some form of nymphomania and have now changed our interviewing procedures. She'd go up to the desk and smack the receptionist's butt. The receptionist grabbed her hand and cussed her out the third time she tried doing it. She was being trained by our male manager, and she placed his hand on top of her crotch and kept telling him, "My mother lives down the street. We can just hang out there, babe." Yes, she called him babe. Oh, we can go there really quick. We could all go. She was pushing her chest onto him and intentionally bumping into him. She also hit on every single customer. I'm a manager at a restaurant. A new hire, a young adult male, was berating a female long-time employee about how her use of birth control indicated that she was a big old promiscuous working girl. I had to explain to him how inappropriate that was on so many levels, and then can him. Also, this doesn't really fall into firing quickly, but it's amazing how many people can show up to orientation without the proper identification, so you can't even start them. Not fired, but we didn't hire a lady because during her interview we asked, "Describe a difficult situation at work and how you overcame it," and she replied, "During my divorce, I didn't want to talk to my ex, and I told my oldest child they'd be the ones arranging visits with their father, and my daughter said she didn't want to have to do that, so I sent her to live with her dad instead. It was really hard, but I ended up making the right choice." Nope, didn't hire her. 5 days. We hired this server who'd been waiting tables her whole life and was GM of a restaurant for about 10 years at one point. She was the typical alcoholic white trash lady with stringy hair and baggy sweaters and smelled like stale smoke. Anyways, she somehow makes it through training, barely, and shows up for her first shift late and hammered. She walks into the back booth and proceeded to pass the F out. A different manager tried stirring her awake, then poking and shaking her a little. Nothing worked. Finally, he just roared her name and she woke up and he told her to leave and they'd mail her a check. She was just tottering away, yelling obscenities and flipping everybody off. This is the story of how a couple of people I hired got fired super fast. One guy asked for a multiple-choice menu test and was serious. The other one, on her second or third shift, she was arrested in the middle of the dining room by her probation officers. I was fired after one day because I wouldn't upsell a fancy grilled cheese to a 90-year-old lady. 2 different ones. I run a car dealership. I hired a young guy who was maybe 22. He was waiting around after getting hired to get his passwords and was out with the other salesman. A man walks in with his teen daughter and the guy starts loudly talking about the things he would like to do with her in the bedroom. The dad hears and is brought to me. I walked out and fired this new guy. That one was 20 minutes after being hired. The second fire was a guy I'd hired to be a salesman, and I asked him if he had a record. He said no and was fired 4 hours later for having a grand theft auto charge. I managed a fast food restaurant and hired someone to work primarily in the back prep kitchen. The job involved cutting 5 to 10 20-kilo bags of potatoes per shift with a hand-operated machine, dishes, and cleaning. He had a great trial shift. I scheduled him on for the next day at 12. I arrive at 3 for the closing shift to find dishes piled high, enough cut potatoes for maybe the next half-hour maximum, should be enough for the whole night by the way, and this guy was just sat in my damn office chair texting. Nope, bye-bye. 3 hours from start to finish, 15 minutes from when I walked in. Well, at least this guy wasn't like that other story we had about chopping potatoes. I'll take the lazy guy over the one who lies on his resume and makes the world's most unorthodox kebab with his own hand. Back in the 80s, I managed a retail clothing store in the mall. We hired a guy to carry heavy boxes for shipping out to the back, and to do basic chores and cleanup. First day on the job, 10 minutes after he'd clocked in and was supposed to be loading boxes into the pickup area for UPS, I walked into the dressing room and I found him looking over into one of the stalls, watching the teenage girls changing clothes. It was the 80s, so all he got was fired. Today, I guess he'd have been arrested. A temp we hired for a project interviewed pretty well. Well-dressed, a bit on the svelte side, spoke perfect English with the barest hint of a London accent, looked you in the eye, had a ton of credentials. If anything, he seemed a bit overqualified for what was essentially a grunt lab position. Did well with a bunch of managers. First day of work, he went to orientation. I got a call from someone who worked in that building and said my new temp was a real piece of work. Sat in the conference room, slipped his shoes off, and propped his cracked feet on the chairs in front of him. Okay. He also bought a huge, sloppy, highly spiced pastrami grinder and left a mess behind. He slapped the butt of someone over there. She reported it, but I didn't hear about that officially from HR until day 3. On day 2, he showed up to the computer lab. He was a completely different person from the interview. I mean, like a different human. He was squat, overweight, different face and hair, had a thick accent. I didn't know who he was, but he wasn't the guy we hired. The only similarity was his ethnicity. But he was completely not the same person. This guy was gross and completely inept. We went over his resume and I got a copy of his ID. He wasn't even a US citizen. I'd never come across this before. The temp company pulled a bait and switch. On day 3, he was 2 hours late, but by that point I had the permission to fire him based on his lack of being a US citizen. We later found out that his temp agency would send the nice guy in for the interview and then send someone of the similar race to the job with the same name, and they'd gotten away with it for quite some time. But usually the guy they sent wasn't this poor quality, so sadly it went unnoticed until now. Within the first 3 hours, when I was a manager at McDonald's, we'd sometimes get employees coming in for the local inmate work release programs. Lots of felons and other undesirables. This particular one was old. I'm talking 50 or 60. On people's first days, we usually put them on the front register so they familiarize themselves with the menu and whatnot. After sending everyone on break, I take my break and come back to see the man fishing out the dollar bills from the Ronald McDonald House Fund thing with coffee stir straws, with customers waiting in line to have their orders taken just watching him. My very first managerial job was as the loss prevention manager for a fairly large department store. The first person I ever hired for loss prevention ended up stealing from us the first night she closed alone. I figured it out the next day and set up a trap for her the second time she closed alone. My regional manager and another loss prevention manager and I set up hidden cameras and pretty much hid in the store the whole day to catch her stealing after closing time. I worked at the boarding kennel for a few years and I really loved it. It's hard, loud, dirty work, but I like animals and dogs are the best people. We also boarded exotics, which was neat as heck. Anyway, the boss hires on this girl that seemed a little off. During training, she'd stare off into space and not really acknowledge me. But when I walked her through the process of feeding and cleaning kennels, she did it just fine, so I set her on her way. Her first real day of work, she went out to clean the kennels, scoop poop and wet bedding and replace it. This is a long process. It takes 2 hours if you really know the work. Well, 6 hours into her shift, nobody had seen her. So I went hunting and easily half of the kennels aren't done and a lot of the doors are open. For the dog's safety, you just don't do that. Now, I can't find the girl or 4 of the dogs. I run to the boss because I genuinely thought this girl had stolen someone's pets. And the whole team goes looking for her. We knew the boss had found her because she's a screamer. This girl has got these 4 big dogs, a Malamute, a Great Dane, and 2 Shepherds, all on leashes, tied to the fence, and she's giving them baths in the owner's horse trough. We don't groom, and she's bought the shampoo from home in her lunchbox. She didn't understand why the boss was mad. It's so hot and they look so unhappy. Look at how happy the other 10 I already did are. The boss literally dragged her to her car, kicking and screaming because apparently we mistreat your dogs. So yeah, 6 hours. Teachers, what's the biggest red flag of any kind you've seen from a student? I was giving a spelling test to my 3rd graders and one student calmly got out her glue and poured it into her ear. Oh, that sounds like a reasonable response to me. I'm sure she just wanted to block out noise in order to focus on the test. Oh, I had managed to push this other student out of my brain. So let's call him Brian. Brian was a 6th grader. Brian was, on first glance, a classic case of look at me disease. He constantly needed to be the center of attention, he needed to be liked, but he was also very sensitive. He'd been in my class about 2 weeks when he first broke down crying during a lesson. I pulled him aside to talk privately and asked him what was the matter. Mr. Bones, these other kids just don't understand. I'm not trying to be annoying, I've had a hard life, and everyone's just making fun of me without knowing what I've been through. He said all of this through big wet tears. I really felt for the kid and tried to make him feel better. He continued, when I was in 1st grade, I saw my younger sister get unalived by a drive-by. It happened right in front of me. It was so awful. And then just full-body heaving sobs. This was literally in my 1st month of teaching. I wasn't prepared for this, but I tried to do my best for the kid. I had someone from the office come and get him, and in my free period following the class, I called his mother. The way she responded with such nonchalance chilled me to the bone. Mr. Bones, my son Brian lies like a rug. He's an only child, and he's only ever been an only child. So I'm thinking to myself, wait, what the frick? But what about these tears, I asked her. She said, when my son was 2 years old, he'd sit in front of the mirror and make himself cry. He'd practice it over and over, and I'd tell him to stop it because he was scaring me. I just didn't even know how to respond to that. I can't even remember how we wrapped up the conversation. The next day, Brian starts crying in class. I pulled him out and told him about the conversation I'd had with his mother. He raised his head up, his face stained with tears, and he had the biggest smile on his face as if you just told him we were going to stop at McDonald's on the way home. Not elated, not benign, just pure, waxy-faced nightmare fuel. Since that day, I pegged him to become one of those kinds of serial killers who burns through a ton of different identities. I actually came across some social media posts years after the fact. He's a substance dealer now, so I guess that's better than being a face-eating murderer. That is indeed better than cannibal, serial unaliver, correct. However, I find it hard to believe that someone with that particular sociopathic tendency to lying and manipulating won't have made a lot of people unhappy in some other way. Without treatment, of course, nobody's truly without hope. The author has left another dose of mini-stories and factoids about our dear Brian. Brian cried maybe once more in my class after that day, but he seemed to realize that I wasn't going to fall for it. I do believe him to have been a sociopath, not a psychopath. It wouldn't surprise me if he was still a sociopath. This was easily the most manipulative kid I've ever taught. In spite of his mother's comments to me, he still had her fooled most of the time when he got in trouble. She often claimed that Brian's teachers had it out for him. Yes, he might also be a face-eating murderer as well as a dealer. I concede that I can't know for sure. Yes, he probably would have made a great actor. We didn't have a drama department or class in our middle school. I was working in the inner city at a school that was falling apart literally and figuratively. No, my real name is not in fact Mr. Bones. Lots of parents don't get their kids the help they need for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's because they're crappy parents. Sometimes they work crazy hours to raise a kid or several kids on their own and they get overwhelmed. Sometimes they're in denial. I can't really say what Brian's mum's case was. She meant well, but I think it was easier for her to not confront the path her son was going down, hence the whole dealer thing. I won't reveal exactly where I worked, but it was name-checked in California Love by Tupac. A few people have called this fake and called me a lying CUCK. I taught several years ago for a short period of time. Average burnout time for teachers is 3 years, so be kind to your kids' educators. They see your kids more than you see them. No, I'm not Brian, and he's not wearing my face and using my login info. I haven't seen Split, but I'm pretty sure Brian wasn't in it. He's too busy running that trap house. And not all Brians are evil, just the ones who replied to me to tell me that not all Brians are evil. Hashtag not all Brians. I teach middle school math. We have a Saturday school once a month for students with failing grades to get extra help in whatever subject. One kid didn't want to be there and was placed in a conference room in the office so that he didn't disturb the other kids. So this kid pulled out a tooth, an adult tooth. He pulled it out of his face and it was terrible. The best part was that I had to run to grab some copies from the area he was in and checked in on him. Smiling, gap in teeth, he tells me, "Hey, my tooth fell out." This is honestly the worst thing I've read all day. I remember a kid in 5th grade that would crap in his pants, reach down there, pull some out, roll up little dookie balls and throw them at the other kids, all while laughing like he was having the time of his life. That's got to be some kind of red flag. I'm not a teacher, by the way, but I saw the question and instantly thought of this kid. I was in the 5th grade in 1980. The protocol for handling this kind of behavior in children is probably different now. I really hope he got some help. This was a long time ago. I'm not a teacher, but I was doing co-op placement as an educational assistant when studying sociology. We're talking like 15 years ago, give or take. Had a student in the class, with behavioral problems, mind you, walk up to another teacher who was pregnant and proceed to tell her that he was going to cut it out of her. Nobody really knew how to react, and the tone in his voice and look in his eyes was up there with the most evil thing I've seen up till that point in my life. He had severe behavioral problems related to his disability. He was sent home and kept at home for a number of weeks, but was eventually allowed back in class. This was an experimental program, which no longer exists, at this one high school for rather severe behavioral issues, so the rules were bent quite a bit while I was there. He was actually a rather pleasant kid more often than not, but when he had one of his bad days, he was one of the worst in respects to violence and threats. There was a kid in my brother's 5th grade class who tattooed himself with pen ink. It worked, and he was forced to wear sleeves when he played on the middle school basketball team so that they didn't show. He is now in prison. I should clarify that doing a few dots or a little smiley face isn't a big deal. People do that all the time and turn out all right. This kid did his entire arm down to the elbow. I subbed for this 6th grade teacher a lot. She had this student who seemed like a harmless but obviously mentally and physically disabled kid. Whenever I saw him, he was calm, drooled, and carried an iPad so that he could semi-communicate. He didn't seem 100% there at any given time, but like I said, he seemed harmless. Halfway through the school year, the teacher that I subbed for decided that I should now probably know to steer clear of this kid if he gets any sort of mood other than calm. Like if he's upset that it's cloudy, then I can't talk to him. He also had an adult that followed him everywhere. I assumed this guy was a para, the people that help IEP or Independent Education Plan kids. But no, he was a legit handler for this kid. It took me a while to dig this kid's backstory up, but apparently this kid had to be medicated to high heaven just to be at school. hence the drooling and super passive behavior 99% of the time. Apparently, he was ultra crazy aggressive, and if he got into any bad mood, it meant that his meds were wearing off and he was a ticking time bomb. His meltdowns caused school lockdowns because of how violent he was towards himself and others. There was actually a literal designated plan for this kid if he snapped, hence the handler. I felt really bad for him because of his medicated out life and the fact that he probably has some incurable rage issue or brain problem. But sweet Jesus, the kid terrifies me now that I know. I just wanted to say that this was in a rich suburban school district where they have a tendency to rug sweep really bad IEP kids until high school. There aren't any good private or alternative schools nearby for IEP kids. Pretty much all the other schools are private Catholic schools with zero special education departments. Once the kids get to high school, the school generally recommends either online school or the nearby alternative high school that specializes in special ed. I don't think that we can really say that this kid was waving any red flags himself. It's just kind of seeming like a problem that no one knew how to deal with, and he was the biggest victim of this condition. I don't know if more therapy or treatment could have helped him, but my God, it's just so sad. Mum taught for more than 30 years. About 10 of them were in a self-contained classroom. So if the kids didn't succeed in this self-contained unit, they were expelled entirely. So basically she got the worst of the worst. She loved the kids, and over that time she only had 2 that truly frightened her. The common thread was that they had no emotions whatsoever. They were never happy, never sad, never jealous, and never vengeful even. It was just nothing. At least the kids who were angry, frustrated, apathetic, or silly were feeling something. Of those 2 kids, one is now in jail for a long, long time, and she doesn't know what became of the other one. One year I had a female student in middle school whose arms were really just a bunch of bloody, scabby cuts. She hid it really well at school as it was winter and the students were all wearing sweaters. We only found out because one of her friends started crying and told me I needed to talk to her immediately. I used to have a kid in my class that enjoyed hurting others, laughing right after throwing something at a student and laughing harder at them being affected by said action. I was in charge of an after-school program for junior high and high school students aged 13 through 18. One time I was waiting for a 13-year-old girl to get picked up from her friends, and this was the conversation I heard across the room while they were messing with the whiteboard. Girl number 1 drew the symbol of the Third Reich. Girl number 2 said, "You can't do that, that's bad." "Why?" said the first girl. "I don't know, it's just bad." Girl number 1 then says, "Oh, it's okay, my dad has it tattooed on his chest." I didn't really know what to say at that point. I should add that I was working in a semi-rural part of the US, and the dad was a white guy who lived in a trailer park. I'm not one for stereotypes, but I'm pretty sure the guy wasn't Hindu or Buddhist. But I do appreciate that so many people tried to look for a silver lining in it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Wife is a teacher. 8th grader would smear his own number 2 on the restroom walls. Threatened to commit the unspeakable act on my wife in the comments section on her classroom YouTube channel, which was a rookie mistake using your real name as your username. When we called out for it, parents lawyered up and said that no one could ever prove his account wasn't hacked, so he had no way of knowing it was him. Later, my wife found a note near her classroom door in his handwriting saying that he was going to go on a rampage in the school and that he already knew where everyone was going to hide. The school went on lockdown and he was later found hiding in the woods behind the soccer fields. When questioned about it, he said he ran because he was scared. I could go on. That kid will likely go on a rampage in his high school. Oh, the worst? I guess I had a student with claw marks over her eyes. Like legit looked like someone had scratched her eyelid. The whole upper area right under her eyebrow was scarred and it was like too small to have been an animal. Me and a coworker asked about it. She started getting defensive, and once a kid starts stammering and making excuses, you've got to make the call to CPS. I got fired for making the call. Apparently I hurt the school's standing in the neighborhood because I snitched, and the kid got removed from her family and sent to another state. Another kid had trouble staying up in class. Turned out his house was at the center of a substance bust later that year. God, that was a fun time. I teach in an area that's been very, very affected by the opioid epidemic. I taught a student who was well known to be addicted to smack. He was also the person who gave his mother her first dose of it. Sadly, his mother eventually succumbed to taking too much of it herself. The last time I saw him, he had self-tattooed on his arm, "I killed my mom," in huge letters. My mum is a special education teacher, mostly kids with autism and learning disorders, middle school aged kind of thing. But her program had gotten students who don't fit into regular classes, so they get dumped into her program. One of the students, about 6 or 7 years back, was super weird. He was mouthy, hated authority, and was a lot bigger than the other kids. He wrote, "I'm going to R-word Miss Teacher" in bright red Sharpie on a paper that he had to pass in to another teacher. They called his parents into the school to talk about it, and the student's mum started laughing. She said that her child had a weird sense of humor, but he means no harm to anyone. She also had another student whose parents had him miss school on December 21st, 2012, because the world could end and they couldn't expect him to spend his final day in school. There's a kid in this preschool class, aged 5, that says the most off-the-wall stuff. So far this school year, she said that her dad is going to come to the school and attack people and their families, that she has a doll that will come to this other little girl's house and go full Annabelle on her butt, and finally that her dad shoots kittens. At this point, I'm thinking of calling CPS or at least pushing the issue with the school district, because there's no reasonable explanation as to why a 5-year-old would be saying these disturbing things. I'm not a teacher, but I had a kid in the 2nd grade with me try to take my eye out with a pencil. Multiple times. He was obsessed and had to be taken out of class and dealt with on several occasions. Never anyone else, just me. And his reasoning? He looked me in the eye and said, "You did the same to me in my past life." The stoic and tense look on his face when he said that still gives me chills. My cousin, currently in 1st grade, had a girl in his class throw a computer tower in their classroom and slapped and punched the teacher as she tried to gain control. To my knowledge, nothing ever happened to the girl because the teacher and the girl's mother are good friends. They don't want to ruin her time at school by reporting the incident. My mum used to teach in a boys' secondary school. This one kid was generally a jerk, violent, rude, and provocative. One day, the deputy head dropped down dead of a heart attack in front of some of the kids at break time. Less than 10 minutes later, this particular kid was imitating the teacher dying in front of the others and laughing for their entertainment. Not in the least fazed by what he'd seen and had no idea that what he was doing was horrifying. And just to clarify, this kid was in year 10, so he was 14 or 15. This was not an awkward way to deal with what he'd experienced, he just thought it was funny. The teacher's wife worked at the school, and when she came back after the funeral, he did his little impression for her too. Oh boy, yeah, fairly safe to say that that was not cool, to say the least. I mean, there are some kids who have a weirdly removed attitude to death or aren't very good at processing it for any number of reasons, but you know him better than any of us people on the internet and seem to have a prior history with him, so I guess we'll take your word for it. I had a classmate who really wanted to hurt the others for fun. If there was blood, he'd celebrate it no matter if he was expelled. A real follower of Korn. Blood for the blood god. Students skipped the week or two that he had pool time at PE, cancelled his parents at conferences, and he was exhibiting some gang tendencies. Oddly, so were the parents. I found out later that year he'd skipped pool PE class because he'd had his last name tattooed across his back in Old English. This was a 14-year-old. My mum has taught kids for nearly 40 years. The only one that ever truly scared her was a kid that used to act like he was sucking up until he thought she wasn't paying attention. Case in point was when she gave everyone a Christmas gift before break. He fawned over how great the gift was and that he was going to cherish it forever. The second he thought she wasn't looking, he threw it in the garbage. He was 9. As a side note, I worked with him at a telemarketing place in high school. I remember when he told me that he'd been diagnosed as a sociopath. He was eating an ice cream cone while explaining it to me and said, "Basically, a sociopath means I'd feel the same way eating this ice cream as I would killing a dog." Ugh. The fact that he explained his diagnosis so clearly and understandably is very interesting to me. I had a kid who would pinch and slap someone else with an infection around his mouth purely to see them in pain. When he lost his crap, she didn't flinch, showed no remorse, and was scarily intelligent. I think there might be some issues there. Also, a kid putting a Stanley knife to someone's neck and laughing as they tried to free themselves. It was my first and only year of teaching. I had a student earlier this year who came to me because he was, quote, kicked out of his last school, according to him. He was covered in tattoos as a freshman in high school. On the second day of having him in class, I looked up from my desk while students were supposed to be taking a test to see him miming cutting off my head with something shiny. When I went back to see what it was, he laughed and hid it, swearing that he had nothing. I looked up to see him doing it again. Same thing happened, I let it go. After he left the room, I found the pen he'd been writing with under his desk with 2 small incisions in the cap. I immediately reported it to admin. The incisions on the pen indicated that he was using some kind of sharp object, a thumbtack I suspect, to mime cutting my head off. And yes, we documented and reported these things every step of the way. He was moved to another teacher a few days later for an unrelated scheduling issue. He threatened to kill her. He was moved to another teacher because of that, and in this third teacher's class, he drew pictures of rifles all over his essays. So many red flags. He was eventually sent to the alternative school a few months later, but he'll likely be back. I'm a college professor. A guy a little bit older than me wrote a paper in which he shared a fantasy about beating the crap out of a younger female therapist for not listening to him about his problems. He was constantly distracting in class, cheated in every way imaginable, and just struck me as off. I repeatedly put in student of concern notices about him because I really thought that something was going to go wrong. Shortly after the class ended, he took his newborn kid and ran away to a different state. You know, I might have set off a red flag for teachers when I was in 3rd grade. I'd always pull my pants all the way down to my ankles when I peed at the urinal, and obviously I'd get constantly made fun of for it. Well, it got very tiring and hurtful, so one day when I dropped my drawers to pee, the boy that walked up in the urinal besides me, like seriously, who walks up to pee side by side with someone anyway? He started running his mouth off and I just nonchalantly pivoted and peed all up and down his leg. The principal called my mum, and I was tactfully talked to at home about how it's good to stand up for yourself, but that wasn't an appropriate way. Then my dad took over and explained how I really needed to basically not get completely undressed to pee standing up at a urinal. Oh god, you've reminded me. I used to pull my pants all the way down and it started to draw attention. I was in 1st or 2nd grade. One day, this kind of rough kid came into the bathroom while I was peeing. I thought he was going to mock me or kick my butt, but he casually told me that I should really just use my zipper, and made it sound easy. He walked me through it. It was incredibly sweet and merciful, and from that day forward, I used my fly. Real talk though, I think there's such a long stretch of ages where boys learn that pants all the way down isn't in fact cool, and most of us had at least one heartbreaking encounter where we realized we were doing it differently. I taught 2nd grade for a bit, and one time I had a child come from a behavioral class because he scored high on a lot of tests. He was big for an 8-year-old, had no spatial awareness, and would accidentally hurt the other students. One time he celebrated and flung his arms out and clotheslined one of my students, dropping her to the floor and giving her a nasty gash and bloody nose. There was a lot of blood. Now, I said he was from a behavioral class, so he was really smart but lacking in terms of maturity and other things. He constantly shoved his hands down his pants and would pick his butt and sniff it in public. I'd always call him out on it and he'd stop immediately. He'd also throw big fits if I took recess time away from him for no homework or for misbehaving. This one day we had a lockdown drill. During a lockdown, no one's supposed to make a sound, and it's extremely serious. He fooled around the whole time and was giggling and talking. I was very upset with him, so after it ended, I revoked his recess completely. He went ballistic and lost his crap. He picked up his desk and launched it across the room and started screaming, and grabbed a pencil and tried to jab himself hard in the stomach with it. I managed to restrain him while an aide took the pencil and then took him outside the hall to calm him down. That didn't really work out as he kept becoming more violent. Eventually, he was sent home. The rest of the class was pretty mortified and afraid of him. There was a chunk of desk that flew off from how hard he threw it. An 8-year-old. I'm also a male teacher at about 175 pounds and I work out pretty frequently, and I could feel how strong he really was when I restrained him. That kid was intense. About a month after that, he started making really great progress and his grades kept improving, along with his behavior. But I honestly was so wary of him for the rest of the year, waiting for something to go down again. Do fast food workers ever sabotage meals when their customers behave like jerks? At an old pizza place I worked at, we all found out that our boss took some of our tip money from the jar for himself. That week, everyone who came in got extra free food. A dozen wings, you say? Here, have 30. Add 5 ranches to dip in. And no, the boss didn't wonder why he was suddenly getting so many praises from customers. Who are you kidding? We delivered lazily prepared, subpar pizza and fried foods to people who were blazed out of their minds and white trash. When I worked at McDonald's, I'd make the sandwiches look like the pictures if people were rude. This means putting all of the condiments on one side of the burger with the pickles hanging slightly out. You sick mother... About 10 years ago when I was working at KFC, I had an older lady start yelling at me as soon as she began talking. She also mentioned something about not smashing the biscuits. So I smashed the biscuits. Oh, I did something like this. Mean people got the sides placed on top of their biscuits, and I always carefully picked out the nicer pieces of chicken and biscuits for people who took the effort to not be a C-word to me. Look upon your slightly flattened biscuit and rue the day that you scoffed at me and then told me to hurry the hell up. Dunkin' Donuts. Always some jerk holding up the line because their coffee is a shade lighter than they wanted. Oh, and they wanted 3 cups of mocha, not 4, and all in the middle of that 6 a.m. rush. When you do that, that's when you get decaf. Once I had a lady who made me go through 15 wafer cones until I found the one that wasn't destroyed according to Her Majesty. Wafer cones are fragile and are prone to tiny chips around the edges, by the way. When I finally found one that she approved of, I pressed the ice cream into it just hard enough to create a strategically placed hairline crack. That crack would get worse and worse the more she bit into it, ultimately rendering the cone useless. Advanced wafer cone warfare? Cone of duty. Modern wafer. I once accidentally served a customer a smoothie with a bolt in it. It came off of our ice-making machine and it had a plastic part in it. The customer came back in and showed me some of the plastic. I dumped the smoothie out in the sink and saw a massive screw. He asked me if I found anything else. I lied to him and made him a new smoothie while feeling very thankful. Well, this technically doesn't fit the description, but I had to go through the pain of vividly imagining breaking my teeth on the metal or getting my throat and mouth stabbed. So do you, listeners. I don't know why imagining any sort of internal mouth injury gives me the shudders so much. When I worked at Burger King, there was this one middle-aged lady who'd come in once or twice a week and order a burger with extra onions. And no matter how many we put on, it was never enough. I'd put a sizable handful on, even though you're only supposed to put like 4 or 5 rings on it and then add a few more if they ask for extra. And it was just never enough for her. So one day she comes in and the store manager, surprisingly given the industry, she was actually pretty cool. She told me to put a lot on. So I put a huge handful on and my manager handed it to the customer while making sarcastic comments over the internal channel in our headsets. Sure enough, the lady came back and complained that it wasn't enough onions. Keep in mind, we already put, no joke, at least 20 times more onions in than we should have. So my manager, while swearing under her breath, handed me the burger and tells me to put some more onions on. Then before I got a chance to put any on, she was actually like, "No, forget this. Give me some of those gloves and I'll do it." She then proceeded to take almost half of the 2.5 kilo container of onions and dump it on the burger and rewrap it. The lady took it back to her seat while we all went out to the registers to watch. The look on her face when she opened that burger was priceless, and as far as I know, she never complained about not having enough onions after that. I worked at Wendy's for 2 years. I didn't necessarily punish the bad people, but I rewarded the good ones. For example, if it was a relatively slow day and a kind person came in who said things like please and thank you, I'd drop fresh fries for them so they were extra hot and crispy, even if they were relatively new fries. It's the little things that make life a lot better. I didn't ruin any food or drinks in this case, but when I worked at Starbucks, some guy was being a jerk, so I said, "Please don't be rude to me, sir," and it was the worst thing I've ever said to a customer. Probably the rudest I've ever been is when a customer chewed me out for something, it's been 6 or 7 years, I can't remember what it was, and then demanded to have my corporate's number so she could get me fired. I pointed to the sign on the counter, which included the number, looked her in the eye, and said, "I handed in my 2 weeks' notice 3 days ago. Do it." No, but once I was threatened with a punch to the face for getting a hair in someone's burger. Just so you know, it wasn't my hair. It might have come from his substance addict girlfriend that he was toting around who had blonde hair, like the hair he found on his burger. Pizza slinger here. I won't mess with your food, but I sure will shake the crap out of your 2 liters of soda in the car and smile as I hand it to you. One time at Burger King, I was working a particularly slow shift and this little kid came in with just enough money for a cookies and cream ice cream. These things usually take 30 seconds to make, but the kid looked really excited and since things were slow, I took an extra effort to make sure the Oreo cookies were nicely mixed into the ice cream and that the ice cream itself was full to the brim of the cup. Well, my manager didn't like that at all, not the part about taking the extra minute or so on the kid's ice cream, nor the part about actually filling the cup. So he made me throw it out. In spite of my boss though, I just made a bigger and better ice cream for that kid. I added the whole shabam. M&Ms, Oreos, choc flakes, choc sauce, the whole deal. Filled it up so much that it was practically worth 3 times as much as the kid paid, and I told him to run for it. I don't work in fast food, but as someone who works in retail, let me tell you this. If you're rude to me, you're getting the ugliest change in the drawer. When I worked at Wendy's, we used the overcooked burgers for the chili. If they look like they've been on the grill for too long, we just throw them into a pan in a heated drawer. We usually stayed open till 1 a.m., and one time someone came past 1 a.m. I'd already cleaned the grill and had no burgers left on it. The manager took the orders because this witch complained and demanded we take the order. Fine, I'll use this overcooked, dry burger that's been sitting in a pan all day. Not exactly proud of it, but I did it. I used to work at a sandwich shop. Company policy was 3 baby tomatoes per sandwich. Once a lady made me angry, and I only gave her 2. One guy was being a complete butthead to me in the drive-thru at McDonald's, so when he asked for extra pickles, I gave him no pickles. I still feel like a bad mother effer looking back on it. I worked at Subway and a lady came through drive-thru. My Subway has a drive-thru, yes, what the frick. She drove past the order microphone and honked and knocked on the window. Slightly irritated, I opened it and took her order. She got bacon on her sandwich and asked for me to be sure it was crispy. Okay, sure. I give the order to my coworker and tell the lady it would be done in a jiffy. She restates that she wants it crispy, and that the idiot working last night when she drove through was stupid enough to not know what crispy was. I soon realized that I was that idiot. I tell her, okay, I'll make sure it's crispy. Walked over, took the bacon myself, charred the greasy hell out of that frickin' bacon. It essentially just crumbled and looked like pepper. I don't like having my intelligence insulted by someone who won't see me making their food. When I worked at a Taco Bell or KFC, we'd accidentally make orders wrong so the customer wouldn't want it. Then we'd sneak it off to the side and eat it. I had a friend in college who delivered pizzas. He'd have us call in an order, then call back several minutes later after it had been made and cancel it. When his shift was over, he'd get to keep it and bring it to us. And people think that fast food industry workers aren't smart. I think the intelligent ones simply just don't stay very long. I never did anything myself, but I witnessed a female employee blow her nose on a burger after a customer called her the C word. And she had a cold too. Yep, we were real classy at that Carbondale Steak and Shake. Well, I just gagged, but that customer deserved something, so regardless of how revolting this was, I'm gonna let it pass. I don't care how dissatisfied you are. Slurs like this just aren't cool when you're leveling them against your teenage server. When I used to work at a baseball park as a fry cook, I remember this one time the biggest witch of a woman came in and ordered a cheeseburger. No problem. Keep in mind this is a small little league non-profit run-of-the-mill baseball park with a concession stand, so don't expect 5-star quality stuff. She orders said cheeseburger, and I grabbed it off the heating plate thing that we had to keep all the food we made hot. I'd cooked those burgers not even 5 minutes before she came in, so they were still pretty damn fresh. She then says, excuse me, I want a fresh burger, not the one that's been sitting there. I explained to her that I just recently put those burgers out, but she wasn't having it, so I said, screw it, and went ahead and made her a fresh one. So, when I gave it to her, this charming specimen proceeded to say, "What? There isn't any lettuce or tomatoes or anything on this burger." Like I said before, rinky-dink baseball park. You don't expect 5-star quality here. I pointed out the fridge that held all the condiments and told her they're all right there and that you just put what you'd like on your burger. She then threw the biggest witch fit I've ever seen, screaming things like, "I'm not the one who works here. It's not my job to make my own burger. You're the one who gets paid for this, not me. Now you either fix my burger or I'm getting your manager." Again, I complied because it was my first job ever, and I was only 14 at the time, so of course I didn't want to get in trouble. Finally, I put all of her stuff on her burger, still trying to be as polite as possible. I wrap it up and hand it to her. And again, she is not satisfied. She tells me she wants her burger cut in half for her. By this time, I'm completely fed up. I ask her the reason she needed it cut, hoping that this entire ordeal was for her child, which I gladly would have done, or at least some reason for me to feel obligated to grant her request. Her reason was simply, because that's how I like my burgers and I won't eat them any other way. By this time, I'm screaming inside my own head, "Then fricking starve, witch." But again, 14, didn't want to lose my job, so I complied. But, like people say, you never tee off the people who handle your food. So I took her burger to the back to cut it, and instead of getting a clean knife, I grabbed what we call our go-to tool, which was an old knife that we used to dig out dirt or caked-up grease from the grill and deep fryer. Basically, every disgusting place you could think of, that knife had been there. Just for good measure, I scraped off some more gunk from anything I could find in my vicinity, and then cut her burger for her. I wiped the knife off on her burger, as if the burger itself were a cloth I was using to clean my knife. I came back, served her burger with a smile, and said, "Enjoy your meal." In short, the biggest witch ever came in asking for a burger that even a king or queen would find to be too much to ask for. I probably gave her some kind of stomach disease with a dirty knife that I used to cut the burger. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It wasn't an actual customer, but I did do something gross once. I was working at Little Caesars Pizza. For a string of about 4 nights, we were getting a late-night, large order that the buyer just kept flaking on. If no one in the store wanted them, they'd ultimately be thrown away. Well, it just so happened that a car full of 4 or 5 college-aged kids would camp out back and asked if they could have what we were throwing out those same nights. After a few nights, it was obvious they were the ones making the calls. So I swept the floor and put all of the floor dirt and debris under the cheese. We gave it to them with the rest of the pizzas and never had a late-night order like that again. This one chick complained that her fresh fries weren't fresh enough, so when the next batch came, I avalanched them with salt. A guy in my town was once caught crapping in the beans at Taco Bell. As someone who spent a week in the hospital earlier this year with hemorrhagic E. coli contracted from a crappy restaurant, screw that crap. When I was a teenager, I worked at Burger King. This guy started verbally attacking me, saying his burger was cold. I apologized, assured him we'd make another, but he continued to be a right sausage about it. Fine, I assured him his next burger would be piping hot. I went and got a burger right off the grill and stuck it in the microwave for 2 minutes. I made the burger and carried it out to his table. I asked him to try it to make sure it was hot enough. I stood there sweetly smiling as he took a big bite and promptly burned his mouth. As he was frantically gulping down water, I asked him if it was hot enough. He nodded sullenly while still gulping down water. Still smiling, I said, "I'm so glad, sir," and nodded as if I was proud of a job well done. I turned on my heel, walking away, and felt like a queen for the rest of my shift. I licked the grilled cheese and pickles that my co-worker's ex-girlfriend ordered. She stole some of his military money and used it to buy substances. I'm well aware that what I did was disgusting, but that witch had it coming if you ask me. I never sabotaged, but if someone was rude, they were getting the lettuce that was wilted, or the tomato with the big splotch on it, or a salad that was just on the edge of expiring. If they were nice, they got fresh curly fries, mozzarella sticks, what have you. Also, we used to screw the corporation by holding the freezer door open, which blocked the office's window, while we ate by the fryer, or dropping extra moz sticks and jalapeno bites so we could eat them in secret. Also, if they ever bring them back, Arby's cheesecake bites are 1,000,000 times better frozen than fried. Tell your friends. Not on purpose, but the summer after my senior year of high school, I worked at a really busy pizza shop. It was not a chain, but a company with only 2 restaurants in the Minneapolis area, where everything was handmade. To the point of pouring flour, water, yeast, and salt into a big bowl and mixing it with an industrial bakery mixer for the crust. Tomatoes were pureed and seasoning was mixed in. Mushrooms were mixed with garlic and butter and baked. Cheese was sliced from a big brick with a meat slicer, one of those electric circular spinning blade things, but manual, the saw the back and forth kind of deals. Anyway, it was blazing hot that summer in 1988, and the kitchen was not air-conditioned. I had a drip of sweat run off my nose and into a pizza a couple of times. We were so busy that I couldn't take the time to do anything about it, so I just kept making the pizza. Hopefully my germies got baked to death in the oven. Well, while it's very sweet that you're feeling guilty about this after all these years, let me assure you that anyone who's ever eaten at more than a few restaurants in their lives statistically has to have consumed a tiny amount of baked sweat and breath vapor in their food. People are making your food, things happen sometimes, literally don't sweat the small stuff. I've worked at Pizza Hut for 7 months, and I've not seen any of my co-workers do anything to the food, although I've seen many customers claiming that their food has hair in it or has been improperly made to try and get it for free. Okay guys, I think I've won this one. Tim Allen would frequently stop in at the coffee shop I worked at in Colorado. When he came in, he always had a good 6 to 10 people in tow and would always order these super high-maintenance orders for drinks. Like 2.5 shots, 30% foam, 165 degrees Fahrenheit, just stupid crap, and worst of all, after doing this, he'd never tip. Never. I'm talking not even the leftover change. And to all of you saying, "Why should you expect a tip? You make coffee." Frick you, I get paid peanuts. Anyway, I decided to move back home and was leaving this place of employment in a few days. In walks the toolman himself with his 8 friends and family, and they order their drinks. Upon completing his beverage and handing it out, he took a sip and made a stupid little lemon face and said it was too hot. So I make him another drink and he complains that it wasn't stirred enough. So I remake the drink, and he looks at me again and says, "I can taste the decaf, you know," with a smug little look on his face. I think to myself, I'll give you something you can taste. I took the lid for his drink under my apron and proceeded to paint every part of the lid with my hairy family jewels, inside and out. I handed it out along with a free drink coupon, and that's it. He frickin' loved that drink. In short, I teabagged Tim the Toolman Taylor with a tasty, testy treat. I cannot confirm if he went, "Eh?" when he drank it. No, but I've worked in real restaurants where buttholes would sabotage the food because they were angry with the owner. They'd screw up orders to waste food and cost money, F stuff up when the health inspectors came, soap the soup to make people sick, and just flat out steal food and booze. I used to work at a pizza joint, and there were plenty of times I wanted to sneeze on a pizza when a customer was a butthole to me or the person on the phone, but I could just never bring myself to do it. I'm Canadian though, so I might not count. Some cop asked for a liter of cola and was being a jerk about it, so I stabbed a hole in the side and covered it with a promotional peel-away sticker. Man, that guy was mad. When I was in high school, I had a very quiet and shy friend. I'd frequently decide to fight her battles for her. She dated a guy who ended up cheating on her. Shortly after, he came through the drive-thru of a local fast food joint I was working at. He ordered some fancy blended coffee drink thing, and I mixed a bunch of dirty mop bucket water into his drink before serving it to him. Screw that guy. Other than that, I've never messed with a customer's meal or service, no matter how much of a butt they were. While working at the same fast food place, a middle-aged couple came through in their old beater truck. They ordered something like a small fries, small drink, and one burger. When they rolled up to the window, the smell of strong Mary J came pouring out of their car and into the drive-thru window. I figured they had to be hungrier than what they ordered, so I gave them an extra couple of large fries, large soda, and a large milkshake. I couldn't get away with giving them free burgers. As a thanks, they offered me a hit, so I hung out the window into their truck and took a puff or two. It felt good, man. I forgot the pickles. On purpose. Chef for 11 years now. Never have I or a colleague done anything to foul anyone's meal. If I saw that happen, I'd throw out the offending dish, banish the chef, and call the cops. We're professionals. We act professional. Well, I can see that the internet has its own blind justice when it comes to vengeance, and their idea of a mean person is very black and white. I don't want to sound like a crusader, but I worked as a Starbucks barista in the Jewel drive-thru cafe once. Anytime I had a difficult person, I'd try 10 times as hard to please them, because who am I to judge someone's bad day? I want people to know that even though they're angry, my encounter with them can maybe liven up their day. I have a few stories where I went that extra mile and increased my team's tip revenue because of it. Good people, we are the only ones that can control our actions. And vengeance, in my humble opinion, is a defense mechanism that helps nobody. At the same time, when a customer enters into a business transaction with another human being, they've got no right to be a total C-word regardless of how their day's been. I've had many days where I'm in a crap mood, but that crap doesn't mean I can take it out on the teen at the frickin' drive-thru just so they can hopefully play psychiatrist and help my day. I used to work at Subway. One lady came in and started yelling at me while my boss was trying to tell me something relatively important. It was already pretty busy, and this lady had waltzed to the front of the queue and demanded I make her a sandwich. I asked her to wait a few seconds while I finished talking and listening to my boss, who was already mid-conversation. The lady said something like, "This isn't good enough," and left $5 on the bench and told me to make her whatever sandwich and she'd be back in 5 minutes. I made her a veggie patty with lettuce, a frickload of jalapenos, and red wine vinaigrette, which any sandwich artist in the world will tell you is the most foul sauce ever known to man. One of my coworkers sniffed that sauce and just blew chunks one day. She came back 20 minutes later, picked up her sandwich and change, and probably didn't enjoy the rest of her day. When I was a teenager, I threw a chicken patty on a fillet of fish when we were busy, and the fish was still cooking. The customer did nothing to make me angry, and I feel bad for it today. What's a great idea that just doesn't work because people are just too crappy? There should be a siren in all cars in case of emergencies. I'd use it responsibly, but other people would probably just overuse the siren the same way we do our horns. In 1967, the White Bicycle Plan was implemented in Amsterdam. It was a policy where thousands of unlocked white bicycles were placed around the city, free to use for anyone. People could just grab a bike they chanced upon, cycle to their destination, and leave the bike there for someone else to use on the way back. Unfortunately, the plan failed as most bikes were either stolen and repainted in no time or just thrown in the river for fun. Actually, Paris does have a working shared bike program, but it is actively managed and you have to pay to use it. The bikes are accounted for electronically and you have to check them in and out. Honestly, this is not all that bad. Libraries have library cards for the same reason. Giving stuff away for free on local Facebook group pages, thinking that you can do a nice thing giving away a baby cot or clothes, only to later see the guy you gave it to sell it for cash. I'm still jaded about that. A couple of months ago, some lady on Facebook was asking if anyone had a free fridge since hers broke. A couple offered her a free fridge and honestly, the fridge looked really decent, and she refused because it didn't have an ice maker. The guy even offered to cap the line. Nope, she still refused. Haha, faith lockers. Schools where there are no locks on lockers because we trust each other. This is the most naive idea I've read. Heck, my school's lockers have locks and people's stuff still gets stolen. It's probably worth adding that my friend left his book bag with his laptop in it in the cafeteria and then someone stole it. A few days later, the bag was in his locker but without the laptop. So basically, someone stole his whole bag, only wanted the laptop, then broke into his locker to give him the rest of the bag back. Good people. Trying to give out a needed good of any kind for free. The question isn't if someone takes advantage of it, but when. My aunt put out a nice dresser. Some jerk kids came and just smashed it on the lawn. From then on, my theory was just to put a $5 sign on it to make people want to steal it. Jeff Foxworthy makes a joke about how he put a couch on the curb with a sign that said free, and it sat there for 2 weeks. So he changed the sign to say $200 and it was stolen within 20 minutes. A local bakery used to give out unsold bread at the end of the night. They had to stop when someone tried suing them by saying the bread got them sick. And the bakery I worked at used to give unsold bread to the food bank, but they quit because they found out the food bank staff started selling the bread in secret. I see that this entire story grouping is going to be reasons why we as the human race can't have nice things. Most of these are great ideas if everyone was honest and behaved decently, and half those that don't are that way because they've been hard done by someone else and have become desperate or learned the wrong lessons. So settle in for a ride, folks. Baggage carousels. Stand the frick back, people. We can all reach our bags when they come round. When you crowd into the carousel as close as you can get, you block everyone whose bag happens to come out before yours. Group projects. In theory, a few people of differing opinions discuss a topic, offer different viewpoints, and give an all-encompassing presentation. But the reality, 1 or 2 people actually do the work, one person makes excuses to miss all of the work time, another person tries to hastily add something before the project is turned in so that they can say they did something, and the last person only shows up on the day of the presentation and asks which part they need to talk about. Pay it forward. I get paid every 2 weeks, and when I do, I usually go out to eat twice that weekend and buy dinner for a random person or group without calling attention to myself or asking for anything in return. I've been doing this for years, only asking that the waitress tell them to pay it forward. Shortly before Christmas, I bought an older couple their dinner but had to use the restroom before I left. As I was walking out, the gentleman I'd purchased for tapped me on the shoulder, looked me in the eye saying, "Now look here, Sonny, I just got my meal purchased for me. This is something your generation could do to show some respect." I just replied, "That's awesome, I'll keep that in mind," and walked out to my car. Again, this weekend, I witnessed a couple with 3 small children lose their collective minds because "we're not no fricking charity case. Get the manager right now." The poor guy got reamed for about 5 minutes before they left. I apologized profusely, but in the end I was asked to not return to the restaurant. Other than those examples, I'm sure that it's well received, or at least I hope so. I'm sorry if you work in the restaurant business and had someone freak out on you because they got a free meal. I just wish I could leave my bike unlocked, even for a minute. Online chat rooms such as Omegle, Chat Roulette, those kinds of things. It's a nice idea to help lonely people cope from the convenience of their home, but people are far too creepy and they troll too much. Enough so to scare a lot of people away. So many sausages. Cleanliness and public toilets. Helping random homeless. There's so much panhandling professionally that I don't trust to give $1 to a guy with a sign. They choose the same street corners all of the time. The panhandling has gotten so bad in my town that the local government put up a billboard basically saying not to give your money to the panhandlers, but to give your money to the local organizations that aid in helping the homeless, like our soup kitchens and homeless shelters. Yeah, that happened in my city too, but in my case it was crappy, because the biggest and most well-known shelter and resource for homeless people, pretty much the single go-to place in the city, is a frickin' racket that steals income and social security payments from the people who stay there. Of course, I myself was homeless at the time where all of this was true, which is the reason I know these things. It made me just want to slap whoever was putting those signs up. Leave a penny, take a penny. There always has to be some butthole who just takes everything. Leaving a bowl of candy in front of your house on Halloween with a sign saying, "Take one." In high school, we had a speaker on one day who told a story. He said he'd put a fake scarecrow on his porch for the weeks leading up to Halloween. Then on Halloween, he'd dress up in the outfit and sit on the porch holding the bowl with a sign, "Please take one." Anyone who took more than one would get an awful scare when he jumped up and chased them. Communism. Keeping public restrooms clean. Seriously, if you pee on the seat, clean it up. If you're a dude, lift the fricking seat. Shake the water off your hands while you're at the sink to keep the counter clean. If you drop some paper on the floor, pick it up. All these people think that bathrooms are disgusting are the ones who make it disgusting. Hitchhiking. It was cool in the 60s and 70s, then people started getting murdered and it became not cool. Probably more like then the news started reporting the murders. The 10 items or less express lane. Still remember the Safeway 10 items express lane policy in my college days. I know I had 9 items. This lady told me to get off the express lane. I insisted she ring me up and counted each and every item out loud, and sure enough, ended a 9. Which? Keep right except to pass. In Germany, it's law and people still have problems to do it. Wikipedia's "Please donate $1, and if everyone in X country did, we'd end our campaign in an hour." You know what's weird? If I saw someone out in the street with a bucket raising money for Wikipedia like a charity fundraiser does, I'd happily chuck in £1. But going through the hassle of having to make an online payment for just $1 seems like way too much hassle for me. So I never bother. And I should because I use Wikipedia daily. I guess I'm just a crappy person. Academia as it's currently constructed. I'm all for life as an academic, but the current system rewards the wrong behavior. The current system rewards EDDs who've never taught in a class. Literally, I've seen it. With administrative positions with exorbitant salaries that often have very little to do except bullcrap PR. Over the last 30 years, administrator positions and salaries have ballooned. Regular faculty still get to struggle while fighting to defend students from unscrupulous money grabs from the aforementioned largely useless administrators, and state legislatures exacerbate it all. My source? 10 years of working in higher education. The zipper method when merging 2 lanes in traffic. User-driven content websites where people can post anything and then upvote or downvote submissions based on originality, humor, or intelligence. Most often, this model just descends into various images of a cartoon frog, and by God, I wouldn't have it any other way. Hey, those websites are where we get the content for these videos. How dare you? Oh, I get it, you were being ironic. Carry on, good sir or madam. Turning your hobby into your work or profession. Science. Seriously, when I have to question who's funding your research every time I read a paper, we've utterly failed. This is why some journals require conflict of interest statements. I've been seeing them a lot in journals that report research on the effects of pharmaceutical substances. It always makes me feel better when the statement says, "The authors report no conflict of interest," but then I'll read some great article and see that the author has ties to a big pharmaceutical company. Tisk, tisk. Pretty much anything that involves trust and/or cooperation. So read basically anything. World peace. The customer is always right. As someone who's worked in retail for 20 years, this is probably the least true and most overused statement ever. People are fricking idiots. Look, the original meaning of that saying was to sell what people want, and if nobody's buying it, then the customer is right in that they don't want it. Now the phrase is used by jerks to get their way. Teamwork in Overwatch. I'm a Canadian-based Diamond support main. The team with the best player but no teamwork will always lose to a team that's mediocre but works together. Protect your healers, assuming they can position themselves properly. Change if it's required to win a game. Having hit scan for that Pharah makes a difference. Don't stand at choke points waiting for a pick. Push in together at X time, win or lose. Rinse and repeat. Meta isn't always required. That Widow and Hanzo you're asking to play Soldier might play worse on your meta pick. I've won games against meta with 5 attack heroes and a healer, and other more strange combinations. If you've lost a game or two or find yourself tilting, just take a break. You'll play much better when you're refreshed. If you find yourself blaming your team all the time, maybe your teammates aren't the problem. Combo your ultimates, and for the love of God, invest $20 in a microphone. Getting any job in retail because people suck. Or any customer service job. People think that spending money, no matter the amount, directly or indirectly, entitles them to be treated better and also to treat others worse. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The USA switching to the metric system. That's because people resist change, not because they're crappy. It actually has nothing to do with people's ignorance of metric. That's stupid. It has everything to do with economy. Things are built and sold on the imperial system. Your house is built on the imperial system, the system switches, and suddenly things like fixing plumbing become a nightmare. An expensive nightmare. The country can only do it when industries do it. It won't happen the other way around. Oh, yellow traffic lights. The intention is, please slow down and ready to stop. And in my country, we go, look left and right, if there's no police, go max speed before it turns red. Charities. Screw you executive directors who spend 90% of donations on your salaries and operating expenses and only use 10% for the people the charity is supposed to benefit. That's right, I'm talking to you, American Red Cross, Susan G. Komen Foundation, Wounded Warrior Project, and the list goes on and on ad nauseum. Trying to climb out of the crab bucket. Creating an anonymous Reddit account for all those stories you don't want to share because people might know or find out your username. Basically, even though you're anonymous in theory, a shared anonymous account between all Reddit users. It started once, and within 12 hours or so, someone changed the password and didn't share it. Eating out buttholes. This is the most correct and the least correct answer. Governments. Health insurance, apparently. Health insurance fails because it's a dumb system. The buttholes are just there to make the experience worse. Insurance works for things that are unlikely to happen or are preventable. People getting sick or injured is unavoidable. The two models are incompatible. Peaceful protest. Heck, peaceful anything. You try to take the high ground and people will just take advantage. Just the way the world is, nothing you can do about it. Such a cop-out to say that. No, the world is like that because crappy people never make any effort for personal growth. Turn signals. Why people think you don't need to let other people on the road know when you're moving your 2-ton piece of metal is beyond me. For IT people, Scrum. It's like communism. A great idea in theory, never done well in practice. In my experience, it's middle management that can never provide the structure, funding, and autonomy that it requires. Most teams, SMs, and POs seem to get it and work with it. When middle managers want to defy the triangle of quality, time, and cost, you only get 2, or they think agile is a new buzzword and they can continue with their normal management activities regardless, then it never works. Long-term casual whoopee, also known as friends with benefits. It can work, it just doesn't work for everyone. It requires staying emotionally detached, and most people struggle with that. Drive on the right, pass on the left. Most people just do whatever they damn well please, so this gets all messed up. Self-scan checkouts. People just steal. The idea is great, you can check out faster, less staff, and you can see exactly what something costs. But people are crappy and they just steal. I mean, they stole before that. Apparently, affordable healthcare in the world's largest GDP nation. Facebook. It's a great idea, turned crappy by people thinking that I care about anything more than what is going on in life, not what you believe in. Recycling and actually putting trash in trash cans. Just frickin' do it. Oh, Nintendo. Anything Nintendo. Share your game with friends over link, cable, Wi-Fi, Wii. Just play together, damn it. Nope. So, we're bringing out a console that also converts to a handheld. Wow, excellent idea, Nintendo. But it's got hardware from 5 years ago. Okay, well that's not great, but I can live with it if the price is alright. It's gonna cost you the same as a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. What? Okay, my god. Well, at least me and my friends can play Splatoon online together. Yeah, you've gotta pay for online now. We've been pretty clueless with online for years, but now we reckon we can wing it. Frick's sake, Nintendo. The extra controllers are gonna cost a bomb as well. Frick! Everybody accelerating their cars at the same time when a traffic light switches from red to green. Democracy. In June of 2016, British people voted en masse to leave the EU with no plan, often on misguided beliefs, and in spite of thousands of warnings from politicians and economists. In November 2016, America voted for Trump in spite of his dubious morals, complete lack of political experience, and repeatedly being found to have lied during his campaign. Well, this comment certainly aged like fine wine, no matter which side of the political spectrum you find yourself on, either because you're bathing in the, quote, victory of the developments in both these things, or because you wanted more evidence to sadly point to as evidence of how we never learn anything. Blinkers on a car. Zipper merging. Picking up your dog's number 2 when taking it for a walk. Life. Switching over to renewable energy. We know it's the right thing to do for the Earth, but a select few powerful companies are doing everything they can to stop that from happening. It's not even the right thing to do for the Earth, it's the right thing to do for us. If we continue the way we're going, we'll make our environment uninhabitable for humans. The Earth doesn't give a crap because it's a big dumb rock floating in space. Elections. When you have a 55% turnout, it's a joke when the implications of who you're voting for will affect your future. Well, some states make it hard to register. I had to go through hell. First time I tried to register through the proper channels, they sent me my forms about 3 months later. It was too late for early voting. The paper was dated 3 months before the envelope was stamped, so they had the letter ready and everything, but took forever to actually mail it. You know, any good idea that relies on people not being crappy is in fact a crappy idea. Communism. See also capitalism. Little free libraries. Some communities have issues with them being damaged or all the books disappearing, probably to end up on Amazon. Dating. Taxes. I doubt anyone will ever read this besides me, but taxes are a great idea. Everyone chips in and we get things that we all benefit from. Problem is, we're taxed unfairly and funds are totally mismanaged. Grocery stores and restaurants, big and small alike, all donating extra food to those in need. With the liability if the person chooses to sue you for getting sick, it's just not worth the risk to some of those businesses. Trash cans in public places. I work at a beach and I see this daily. People come and spend the day at the beach with their family and they bring all sorts of food and drinks in order to enjoy their day at a good beach. But when these buttholes leave, they manage to ignore the fact that they're leaving behind all of their trash. And this trash ranges from plastic bags all the way to dirty diapers. It's especially aggravating because we have trash cans literally, and I'm using that word as it's meant to be used, literally lined all the way down the beach with no more than 20 yards between each one. People just suck. Making friends. Nobody tries to make casual conversation anymore because everyone's on edge and feels like they're going to be robbed, attacked, or kidnapped. An older man said hello to my daughter in the grocery store yesterday, and while I was friendly to him, I couldn't help but think, what if he's some kind of prevert? Just take what you need and give the rest to others. The world would be an amazing place if that worked, incomprehensibly amazing. Unloading airplanes column by column instead of row by row. But groups of passengers who want to leave together tend to sit in rows. I'm not sure if columns is ideal, even if more efficient. Also, children. You'd be separating young children from their parents if you did that. I don't know all the details, but my grandma somehow had a backpack that she had no use for. Probably got it as a gift or something. She set it out by the exit doors of her apartment building, with a note taped to it saying, "If you need this bag, take it. Smiley face." Later that day, the backpack was found with a note saying, "Bomb." The whole apartment building had to be evacuated and the SWAT team came in. It was on the news. Firearm control. People are crappy, whatever weapons they happen to grab. It's best for the non-crappy people to be able to match them strength for strength. Listen, I think you mean weapon control, because crappy people that don't understand the need for common sense regulations overreact about having their weapons taken away. This is why other countries make sure it's awfully hard for you to get a weapon illegally. In the US, it's not really possible right now because of the sheer number of weapons floating around. First, you need to get rid of those, and only then start thinking of any real control or restrictions. Until that's done, it's rather pointless to make more restrictions. Public transportation, in a way. At the moment, I'm traveling to one of the metros of Budapest, sitting on a bench like seating, at the end of the bench. It's supposed to fit 6 people. I'm sitting here and 2 morons are sitting next to me with their legs spread out so that nobody can sit next to them or go past without falling over. Also, if our government spent money on repairing the most used metro line instead of building new sports stadiums, then maybe it wouldn't catch fire every 2 weeks. I'd love that. Lending friends or family money. Instead of feeling gratitude, they'll secretly harbor resentment towards you for feeding their own shame. There's also a universal phenomenon that when you loan someone money, you instantly start to notice things that they spend money on every week. None of those old spending habits and luxuries may be either permanently or even temporarily changed by the simple fact that the person owes you money. Worst of all, if you don't ever get paid back, you realize that a long list of other family members and friends probably never got paid back either. The only good part is when someone fully exposes himself as a deadbeat, then he probably won't approach you anymore. Giving iPads to grade school kids to close the digital gap. They'll be hacked and filled with naughty movies, spyware, and games within a week. Charity instead of taxes to help people who need support. You can believe that it would work, but it doesn't. Group projects. In reality, one person does all the work, another one never shows up until the end, the third shows up but doesn't work and distracts everyone else. Early access on Steam. Traffic at red lights picks up much faster if everyone watches for the traffic light to change. Instead, most people watch the brake lights of the person in front of them. I wouldn't call people crappy for following the latter system, but they're definitely hindering traffic. Likewise, braking on the highway sets off a chain reaction most people don't usually consider. Reducing braking where it isn't needed reduces traffic on busy highways. In short, autonomous vehicles are going to save us a lot of time one day. What was the cringe thing that went down at your high school reunion? 5-year reunion. One guy, always kind of a marginal figure in high school but a nice person, after some sort of discussion, pulled his paycheck out and got loud saying, "Now do you think I'm a loser? Don't believe how much I make? Check this out." Of course, he just made things worse and everyone was laughing at him. I mean, he had his paycheck on him? I haven't seen him since, by the way. At my 10-year reunion, the organizers were doing the thing where they give awards for the person who came the furthest to attend, the person with the most kids, stuff like that. The award came up for who had the oldest kid and people started shouting their kids' ages. When it quietened down, this shy girl near the front said in a normal voice, 11. And then we all realized why we'd stopped seeing Heather right before graduation. Someone who was considered a popular kid at my high school tried to organize our 10-year high school reunion on a cruise ship. Obviously, nobody wanted to shell out that kind of money, so the reunion never happened. When I was in 7th grade, this rich, snobby bully, John, grabbed off my head a wool scarf that my mother had knitted for me. He threw the scarf into a pile of muddy leaves and jumped up and down on it. When I went home that day, my mother was furious when she saw the torn, muddy scarf. She made me tell her who did it, then she called the school principal and yelled at him. The next day, John got pulled into the principal's office and paddled. That's when they still paddled kids. That's a paddling. 55 years later, at our 50th class reunion, John came up to me and angrily said, "You got me in trouble in the 7th grade." I got him in trouble? And he's still mad about it 55 years later? I said, "John, you were a jerk in high school and you're still a jerk," and I walked away. Not mine, but my mother went back to her 40-year reunion last summer. In December, she left my father, after 36 years of marriage, for her high school sweetheart, and she's now living with him. During our reunion, a social group of cool people that I had cordial relations with during high school but was never part of all met up and were pretty happy about it. Until it somehow came out over alcohol that all of them had basically been doing the deed together as a group during high school. Except for one of them. It always seemed like the core member of the group from the outside, not unattractive or anything, but for some reason he'd just never clued into the fact that all of his friends were just rolling in the hay with each other en masse for basically as long as they knew each other. There was some very eye-opening loud screaming. Is it bad that I'm just sort of assuming that these were the theatre kids? Is that me putting people in boxes? Sorry. Sincerely, the other former theatre kid who was also the only one that nobody was doing the deed with. Small college reunion with my core group of friends from university. This was about 5 years after graduation. We all partied pretty hard in school, but mellowed out in our late 20s. We decided to all meet up for dinner at a local bar and restaurant. Think Applebee's, but nicer. One guy showed up already wasted with a duffel bag full of multiple packets of green herb and the bottle he started on before meeting us. He decided we were boring, finished his bottle in the restroom and refused to come out. He ended up passing out in there. The bartender kicked him out, he was alone in an Uber, and we had no idea where he lived. None of us wanted to take him to our places, he was angry, blowing chunks, and belligerent, so we dropped him off at his last known address. It was his parents' house. Both of them answered the door and we handed him over. It was past midnight and incredibly awkward. He's not invited to the next reunion. It's been a decade since I finished school. I see an old classmate sometimes when he does maintenance work in my apartment block. About a year ago, he asked me if I was going to the reunion organized by some of our classmates. I said no because I couldn't think of anything worse and also I hadn't been invited. Apparently they organized it over Facebook, which I don't have. When I next saw him 6 months later, I asked how the reunion was and he exasperatedly explained that it had been a real crap show. The mean girls had started planning it together, fell out and then started planning their own. So there were about 4 crappy, tiny, awkward parties and everyone was confused. This sounds like it should have been a TLC show where the judges vote on whose party was the best. The winner gets to go home with the former star quarterback who picks them up on his old motorcycle. My 50th reunion is scheduled for October. All of this is inspiring me to go just to see what happens. I hope I can get across the country by then. So far, it was the only thing that happened at my high school reunion. It was the 10th reunion, graduating class of more than 850. A well-funded high school. Every class has a trust fund to fund reunions. A good friend of mine was our treasurer and organized it via Facebook. We started big. A ballroom, setting for 1,000. Figured spouses and stuff. A year out, lots of interest. Definitely not 1,000 people, and we were starting to scale back a bit. 6 months out, there was even less interest. Lots of people reconnected via Facebook and lost the drive to actually care. Scaled back more. 3 months out, there were deadlines for attendance. The school's alumni association would dispense the funds based on class size and allotment for the milestone. We hadn't put a deposit down because the target kept moving on the attendance. 2 months out, my friend finalizes and does a formal cutoff. She'd kept taking anyone for a month afterwards due to a lack of initial interest. And on the day of, it's at a local bar. Not a small bar either. Good food. Rented the entire place for a Friday night at that. 25 alumni showed up out of 150 RSVPs, with spouses or whatever, it was around 40 people. That was the worst part, was knowing so few people actually gave a crap. But the best part was the treasurer's smirk the entire night. The school had allotted $50 per person for this, so $50 per person plus guests, $15,000, with instructions to pay everything fully. So we ate and drank our butts off to the point of almost being Roman, and the bill was $7,500 between food and rental. So she paid the bill and then handed everyone $100 from the envelope, and then handed the rest of the envelope to the manager and was like, here's a tip. So roughly $3,000 for the waitstaff and crew. Pretty memorable and honestly not that big of a bummer, but holy crap, people just don't care. At my 10-year high school reunion, we had a decent turnout, maybe 100 or more people. We were at a pretty nice hotel banquet hall. There was this one guy I'd known all through high school, and he was a well-known green herb user. I'll call him Chris for this story. I saw Chris walk into the banquet hall, stop in his tracks, turn around in a very slow 360-degree circle, surveying the entire room. He just says, "Whoa," and looks visibly alarmed. He stops and his eyes settle on me. I say, "Hey Chris, long time no see, man." And he kind of slides over to me and whispers in my ear, "This is really weird. I'm pretty sure I know every single person in this room." And that's when I realize he's wearing the same clothes as all of the banquet hall workers. Oh my god, Chris is working as a server at his own high school reunion, and he has no clue what's happening. I walked him out of the front lobby and explained it's our 10-year high school reunion, and he's mortified, beyond embarrassed. He was never contacted and didn't even realize it had been 10 years since we graduated. He just knew he was working another catering gig in a never-ending series of catering gigs. I made him take me to his manager, I explained what was happening and tell the manager there's no way this guy is working his own high school reunion. Awesomely, the manager agrees. We find a different suit jacket and tie for him, and I take Chris back to the party. He ended up having a good night. Aw, that's a lovely bit of relief from all the cringe and revenge so far. Well done for showing Chris a great night instead of a potentially awkward situation. And now, here's another story about another attendee being the server, but with one heck of a twist. The people who were supposed to plan our high school reunion dropped the ball, so I figured it just wouldn't happen. But then this other guy from our high school stepped up to plan it. He was in a graduate program and also working part-time at a banquet hall, and he said that his boss would give us the banquet hall for free. It was a really nice gesture and he seemed really into it. He'd been miserable in high school, grumpy, sullen, unpleasant, and mean to other people. He came out in college, so maybe the weight of having to keep it a secret was part of why he was so unpleasant back then. Maybe he'd be more fun now. I was working a crap job and had no savings at the time, so I was neither interested in having my former classmates pity me, nor was I gunning to shell out a lot of money to attend. Plus my crappy ex might be there, and that didn't feel worth it. The organizer made a Facebook event and asked people to Venmo him the cost of admission prior to attending. He wanted something like $15 to $20 a head, I can't remember. Anyway, it didn't really feel worth paying for. Maybe if there'd be some drinks included or something, I would have gone for an hour. I sent him a private message asking what the admission ticket covered. Food? Drinks? The space was free after all. He posted publicly on the Facebook page that if the cost of admission was too steep, message me and we can work out some financial aid. What? I then publicly posted asking what the admission cost covered. No response. Other people asked too. He said it would go towards having a bartender and server dedicated to the event space as well as towards food. Okay, fair. Folks, he was the server. My friend showed up having not yet paid him and he barred her entry. The people who paid the admission cost showed up to an empty banquet hall, were given a menu by their former classmate and told to order their own food and drink from him. He pocketed the admission ticket money as his fee. After an hour, he bought out one grocery store sheet cake for 75 people to share, and that was it. Not so much at, but before. 10-year reunion for my big school of about 500 graduates per year. The plan was for the reunion to take place over Thanksgiving weekend. To help pay for the expense, raffle tickets were sent out to the entire class to sell. The reunion didn't happen. It wasn't really bad, just odd. A guy came with a full Kiss-style makeup on, white face, black shapes around his eyes, and black lips. We were too awkward and polite to mention it, so everyone just chatted with him as though it was completely normal to turn up like that. Is it possible that he just did that as a private joke, the idea to remain straight-faced and watch people squirm, or was he actually a really big Kiss fan? I mean, I'd hope so, because that's frickin' funny. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. One guy had made not one, but two fortunes and had a net worth of well over 100 million by our 20th reunion. High-speed modem patents in the late 1980s, early investor in broadband, right place at the right time. He had already retired. On our classmate update bulletin, he listed his occupation as unemployed and unemployable as a bit of a gag. Some of the well-meaning but clueless types sought him out to offer encouragement and tips on how to find work. I mean, if that's the worst thing, then your reunion was quite alright and somewhat funny. It didn't happen to me, but I had this friend who got someone pregante back in the day, and she kept the kid. They've both been great about it. He helps financially, but that was the extent of his contribution. She's married soon out of high school and met a great guy who's been the de facto dad. Either way, it's a bring your kids if you have them event, and someone let slip that my friend is the kid's real dad. And the kid heard it, and it was a frickin' crap show. Everyone was trying to figure out who said it, and how could someone spill that secret. In the end, my friend pretended he was shocked and laughed it off as a joke, which honestly, in front of the kid, was probably a good move. I mean, at first I thought, crap, what a jerk about the person who told, but then I realized that I could totally see myself absent-mindedly saying something about it to someone else. If the kid heard it by accident, the person who told must have felt terrible. We had a teacher in high school that told us, by the time you reach your 10-year reunion, at least one of your classmates will have died, during a discussion about mortality. Our 10-year reunion arrived and nobody from our class had in fact died. Saturday night of the reunion, we were partying and having a good old time. One of the organizers gets up to the microphone and was making some announcements. She gets a blank look on her face and drops to the floor. Brain aneurysm. She was dead before she hit the ground. At my 20-year reunion, 2 decades after high school, 2 guys got arrested for fist-fighting on the sidewalk outside the bar we went to on the Friday night. Why were they fighting? One of the guys slept with the other guy's girlfriend in high school and drunkenly brought up the 20-years-old fling. Neither of them married her or even dated her after high school. Those idiots got charges 20 years later for her, though. I didn't go to my 10-year, but my entire friend group did, and they all called me asking me where I was. While on the phone with one of them, he goes, "Oh crap, Brittany's here." Brittany was a train wreck in high school and apparently hadn't changed in 10 years. She proceeded to get trashed, get in a fight with a waitress, and did crystal in the bathroom. The police picked her up that night after she was found passed out in a McDonald's bathroom. My therapist encouraged me to go to my 10-year, which in retrospect was probably a play for job security. That's really funny, actually. To be honest, I get both why it could be a terrible or great idea depending on the others who attend. I guess it's a win-win shot in the dark for your therapist. Either you'd make some ground and regain some confidence, or come back with a need for a million more paid sessions if it was anything like the other ones we've read about so far. My 10-year reunion slowly collapsed and died pathetically before it happened. Turns out our class president, traditionally in charge of organizing, took a hard turn into a footloose character after high school. Highlights of her event planning include no alcohol allowed, not even BYOB. A few classmates in a reasonably successful band offered to play for free, but she was adamant there would be no music or dancing. Plus ones were to be spouses only. 2 guys happily told her they'd bring their husbands, and she kicked them both off the Facebook page. The venue was the high school's soccer field in Iowa in August. We were welcome to bring our own chairs. A few people offered to bring beanbags and vodka and similar games. She said no because it would make the reunion too much like tailgating. Suggested entertainment was a guided tour of the school, which had undergone zero change since we graduated. Catering was from Hy-Vee, which is a grocery store. Their food is actually okay, but tickets were $60. It was ultimately cancelled because out of our class of 300, less than 10 people bought tickets. This was in eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids or Iowa City region, which makes her sudden footloose morals all the weirder. It's got a pretty liberal vibe. I cast no judgment on the Hy-Vee catering, put down your pitchforks, their food is good, it's just not $60 worth of good. I sadly couldn't come up with the name of the band, short of messaging the guys I haven't talked to in 20 years. It looks like they haven't been active in quite a while. A bunch of people who lived locally did indeed pick a bar and a Saturday night to meet up, and had much amoral debauchery. Rumor has it that there was even karaoke. It makes a good story, but I'm ultimately sad for our event planner. I got the impression that she really needed everyone to see that she was the most good person who was doing everything right, and that she hadn't been in control of something for a long, long time. I hope she's doing better now. My class never got to the reunion part. Our class president was MIA. When they tried to plan our 5-year reunion on Facebook, it devolved into people fighting over the venue and whether or not kids were allowed. Half the people wanted to get trashed and get away from their kids if they had any, the other half wanted a dry reunion in a local park with kids allowed. Our class has had a fund for a senior trip and prom and stuff. I don't remember where the money came from. I just know that it ran out because we spent it on stupid crap in senior year. So people argued over whether it would be catered or a potluck, and how much they'd collect from everyone if it was the former. I wouldn't have gone even if they'd managed to figure something out. We'd been there less than an hour, having a great time reconnecting. Suddenly, an old friend approached and said, "Is that your wife over there? She's pretty hammered." And as we watched, she tripped and fell face first, full body crash on top of a 12-top table where many of my old classmates were sitting. The table broke, food and drinks flew everywhere. I walked over, scooped her up and half carried and half walked her out the door. She took a Xanax before going, unbeknownst to me, and was an alcoholic who started slamming drinks as soon as she got there. So, yeah, good times. I graduated in 2008. There hasn't been a single word about any reunion. The class officers did a 5-year reunion on Thanksgiving weekend at a local bar. They only invited who they liked, 30 or 40 people. One of the people who they didn't invite had become a police officer who talked his supervisor into running a DUI checkpoint. Almost half the people who went ended up going to jail that night. 2 of the organizers ended up with substance charges as well as DWIs. The 10 years started off better, but still ended up being a bit of a cluster screw. They decided to go with a picnic, the same place that we had our senior picnic. One of the class officers had started a catering company and gave themselves the job. About a third of the people ended up with food poisoning. Thankfully, COVID caused our 20-year to be cancelled. Someone I knew from school tried to arrange an unofficial reunion as the school wasn't going to do one. He was socially inept, so he'd say and do odd things which people picked up on a lot. But his heart was always in the right place. He went to a lot of effort, but very few people responded at all. Those that did mostly made snide comments about the event behind their back, like dissing the location. Some of them made fun of him personally too, as he was doing some admittedly odd over-the-top organizing. Most of the people who didn't reply seemed to be the more decent people, and coincidentally the ones who had moved away or just moved on in their lives. Go figure. Those who were mocking him were mostly the ones who still spent every week at the same bars with their same school friends. Then, close to the event, he cancelled and blew up publicly, sending everyone a pretty justified message about how they can all go suck eggs, and he was just trying to do something nice and wanted to catch up with people. That was received with more snide remarks as well. They all actually went out the same night for drinks, but didn't invite the organizer. Jerks. He died unexpectedly from a heart attack just a few months later. Goodness, that's really sad and a reminder that some people really don't mature despite growing up and getting jobs. In this case, I'm talking about the jerks who did nothing but show negativity and mock the one guy trying to make something happen. Still sound like high school bullies to me. At the after party, the one guy getting drunk enough to think it was a great time and place to discuss race relations with one of our black classmates. Well, not so much discuss as randomly impose the topic. The cringe nearly killed us all. I didn't attend as I'd moved far from my school, but in the process I was emailing the organizer and wanted to get in touch with an old friend. I figured she could pass my message on. She had the misfortune of having to tell me that he passed away at 30 from diabetes complications. Rough day, and I didn't even attend. Went to my partner's 5-year at the local Elks Lodge. He grew up in a really rich town, so it was actually pretty extravagant. The best part was the open bar until 9 p.m. and then cash afterwards. We were literally having a great time until some scumbag snuck into the basement and stole a bunch of booze, literally multiple boxes. When the bartenders found out, they were furious and kicked us all out. It ruined what would have been an excellent night. I wasn't even invited to the high school reunion. The 10-year reunion invite came up and I thought, yeah, looks like it could be fun. I noticed the venue is a fancy restaurant. Disappointed, expecting some sort of party. Rooms very limited. For a class of over 100, you'd think that they'd have picked a venue with over 25 capacity. I start reaching out to all the friends I've kept in touch with. Not one of them is even remotely interested in going. My old high school best friend suggests we catch up at his and drink instead. Haven't seen him in years, so I bail on the reunion. Turns out almost no one went. One of the girls that organized the thing was begging my mate to go because she was so embarrassed at how few people had RSVP'd. She ended up bailing herself. Turns out for the 10 people that actually went, half of whom organized it, they had to be split up, since they booked a place that wasn't intended for large groups of people. Unironically, the same group that organized it took it upon themselves to organize our end of the school formal. They decided themselves that we didn't want to go with the original plan and completely replanned it without really consulting the general student body. So many people bailed on it that they had to start inviting ex-students. You know, the people who dropped out, changed schools, been expelled. It takes some real stuff to get expelled from a Catholic school in Australia, let me tell you. They had to do this just to meet the minimum capacity the venue required to move forward with the date. Honestly, I know they meant well, but this group ruined the formal for a lot of people. I didn't know I expected anything good from their reunion. Apparently, the after-party was wild, though. Someone almost got thrown off the boat, literally into the water at 2 in the morning, and a guy we know copped another man's eggplant in the eye. He had been sleeping on the floor and someone was standing over him with his member out. Why was it hard? I don't know, and I don't want to know, really. Nobody came. I went to my 10-year. It was admittedly a really frickin' small town, so my class was only 27 people, but 4 people showed up and 1 was actually homeschooled. It kinda sucked. I was looking forward to seeing people and I traveled a long way, 3,000 miles. It kind of jaded me towards my classmates. I'm not angry or anything, just a realization that there wasn't really any connection that survived. What finally made you realize, yep, that person is definitely nuts? We were newly married and my husband worked at an office and had one fun guy that we liked to hang out with. Let's call him Steve. Well, Steve lived at home and asked if he could rent out our basement apartment. It seemed like a great idea to us because of the extra money and he was a fun guy. And it was all good for a week or so. Then my husband had to leave to a different city for training. So, Steve thought he had to be the man of the house. I was a busy trauma nurse on call a lot, and I was hardly home. But when I was, Steve would barbecue dinner and be really miffed if I didn't want it. That's just one example, but that kind of behavior escalated. My husband was only gone for 3 days, came back, and Steve's behavior kept escalating. One night I was going out for girls' night and my husband had a big black tie event with his company. Steve was not as high up in the company and was planning on staying home. This was back in the late 90s, so I'm not entirely sure how he found out where I was with my gang of girls at a downtown bar. About midnight all of a sudden, he shows up and tells me it's time to go, it's late. My table of work friends became totally silent and everyone was staring at me. Also, Steve was wearing all of my husband's clothes, from jacket to shirt pants, socks, and shoes. Fricking bizarre. I sent him away, but the girls' night was pretty awkward after that. He wasn't home when I got home, thank God. I told my husband everything when he finally got home and we went to bed. The next morning, we heard thumps and a lot of loud voices. Came out of our bedroom and he was moving out and had a bunch of his high school friends there. They were moving him out but also taking all of our stuff. Laundry soap and food included. Steve saw we were up and marched over and gave us a lecture about how crappy we were and how we won't fare well without him, and then he finally left. I know he was let go at work later on and I actually feel a bit bad. He probably had some sort of mental illness, but still, very creepy experience. My ex calling the cops on me because she thought I was trying to, quote, poison her. I bought salted butter instead of unsalted. Was she a snail? They believed me right away. Thankfully, they had their heads on straight. That wasn't the first time she called the cops on me for something stupid, but luckily I got my act together and it was the last. I was a personal assistant for a woman who was extremely, shall we say, lawyer-happy, meaning she always was looking for ways to sue people. I accompanied her while she picked up her child from daycare one day. She parked in a no-parking zone that most parents use as a car line to pick up their older kids, and a dad of another child came over and calmly asked her to please move her car so that the car line could keep moving. He was completely cool about it, but my boss ranted all the way home about how the man made her feel unsafe and threatened and that she'd be contacting her lawyer so she could sue him for emotional distress. No clue how she went about that since I quit shortly after. And yes, she threatened to sue me when I quit. Ha ha ha, there's that last line we were waiting for. It's surreal when you start to see the patterns of how these people react to any negative outcome in their lives. I knew a poor soul whose unfortunate choices and disastrous personal skills led to him becoming quite isolated like this, and whether he was losing friend groups, memberships in social clubs that he'd failed to pay the fees for, or jobs, he had one standard recourse: claim discrimination. It was never specified what was being discriminated against. It was never surprising and always easily disproved. It was actually pretty sad, to be honest. I had a coworker who regularly talked about how so many of her friends screwed her over in the past. At first, I believed her and felt bad until she told us what her latest ex-friend did. After basically calling him every name in the book, of course. She and her husband decided one day to replace their furniture. This was a spur-of-the-moment decision, and since they didn't have a truck to move their stuff, they texted their friend to see if said friend could help them, along with that friend's truck. The friend said no, they couldn't do that, they were busy that day. The crazy witch showed up at his house and flipped out when she saw that he was home relaxing, and that's how entitled she thought she was to his vehicle and his time. She screamed about every single thing that she'd ever done for him, petty stuff like, "I bought you a soda when you forgot your wallet," stuff like that. The cops had to be called. From then on out, I was careful not to accept any favors from her because I was 98% sure the only reason she'd ever do such a nice thing is to throw it back in your face when you tell her no. Like, she used to give one of our coworkers a ride home, and I witnessed this coworker on multiple occasions offer gas money to pay for her lunch and stuff as a thank you, and she always declined with, "I'm going that way anyway." Until one day that coworker enraged her, so she ran around telling everyone that they were a mooch and never once paid for gas money. I don't know, maybe this is more manipulative than crazy, but she was always so miserable, so it's not like she was even getting what she wanted at the end of the day, so I consider it some kind of crazy. Months after going on a single date with a woman, she calls me on Christmas Eve while I'm at work to introduce me to her family over the phone as her boyfriend. The one date we had was a dinner at a restaurant. She didn't order anything, just kept eating my fries, then watching TV back at her place. Nothing physical happened, and the date ended with a handshake. When I responded that we weren't a couple, she even started freaking out and crying about how horrible I was for breaking up with her on Christmas Eve. My husband's cousin is the only female in the family that's around my age, so when we used to go to family functions, I tended to hang out with her. Our friendship blossomed, and she was who I considered to be my best friend. We both had 3 kids, and they all loved each other, so we just spent a lot of time together. My husband always told me she was crazy, that she'd turn on me, but I just thought they grew up together and had some kind of weird rivalry thing going on in the family. Her ex-husband hated her. Court cases for custody were happening all the time. It was nasty. They weren't allowed to be in the same room together per court order even. I only heard her side of the story, so I just kind of assumed it was him that was horrible. Fast forward a few years, she was remarried and had a new baby with her new husband. She's an interior decorator and had always been struggling financially. But somehow, all of a sudden, she was buying all the things. New iPods for all the kids, including mine, a gaming laptop for her oldest, furniture, electronics, she pays a year of rent so she won't have to think about it. She'd gotten a new big client who gave her an expense account to decorate his multi-million-dollar home. She spent about 200 grand of his money and was sued later. Well, I was over there because I was now a approved supervisor for the supervised visitation her ex-husband imposed through the court. She started screaming at her new husband for not loading the dishwasher correctly and pushed him fully with real force down the stairs. He somehow manages to be okay, but she doesn't stop, runs after him with clear plans to attack. The guy has to literally flee his own home. I packed up the 3 older kids and my kids and got out of there. I didn't report it because she guilted me into thinking that she had postpartum depression and would be fine. One Valentine's Day, she decides she wants to have a party for the kids. The time didn't work out for me, so I told her we couldn't attend. She lost her mind and called me every name she could think of. She took things I'd said to her in confidence and told our whole family. I got pages and pages of scathing emails. I was crushed. 5 years later, she remarried again and had 2 more babies with the new guy. She called the Department of Child and Families on her 15-year-old son, claiming he had attacked her 2-year-old daughter. She had 0 evidence, but decided she was acting weird and that this must have been what happened. After a heated altercation with the new guy, where police were called, she now has lost custody of all 6 kids and begs me to come to court to be a character witness. Oy. So I was heading out to get groceries with my roommates, and on our way out of the house, we found a homeless man digging through our trash. It was slightly surprising since it's not every day that you find a man looking for empties under your porch. We decided he was pretty harmless since all he was doing was looking around. Plus, he was actually going out of his way to clean up our admittedly disgusting parking lot of not just bottles and cans, he was sweeping the dirt, weeds, and our neighbors' trash that they left unprotected under their porch, which was now swarming with wasps and eaten by animals. We got him some empties from inside, gave him a cold drink, locked the door, and left to get groceries. When we got back, we found that he was still there after an hour and still cleaning our parking lot. We were amazed and grateful, so we struck up a conversation. He seemed like a normal guy. He used to be a business owner. He fixed roofs for a living. He made decent money before he was homeless. He used to be married and he has kids. Unfortunately, his life kind of spiraled after he got mixed up in crystal use. We sort of thought of him as a normal dude who got mixed up with the wrong substance and then got screwed over by the system. That is, until he mentioned that the construction on our main street was a plot by the city to find the Templars' treasure, that he himself was a Templar descendant, and when he claimed that I specifically was the unknowing descendant of Templars. We let him talk and tell us stories for 2 hours before he stopped. It was so wild. It's my favorite story to tell. He was great though. Even after he finished his medicated rambling, he proceeded to finish cleaning our parking lot, and he offered to do it again for cheap if we needed it. Frank, if you ever read this, we love you. I know that I talk way too much about Always Sunny in Philadelphia on this channel for the 5% of the people who've seen the show, but this character could literally just be Frank Reynolds from that same show. He even has the same name. Love it. When they bought a dead bird into a Subway sandwich place and tried to barter it for a sub. This was years ago, so to my best recollection, here's the long version. I was eating at my local Subway sandwiches, a woman comes to the counter, pulls a dead bird from her coat and asks what kind of sub she can get for the bird. Everyone turns and watches as the teenager behind the counter realizes what's going on. He starts yelling that she needs to leave because a dead bird is an obvious health code violation. She gets angry that he's not even willing to hear her out and storms off mumbling and swearing under her breath. There was some girl I met during my teenage years. We chatted for like 30 seconds and exchanged phone numbers. Never met after that, only texted. We did that back and forth for a few months and then I went to college. Then she finally drops "I love you" to me. Obviously, I feel weird about the whole situation because we've only exchanged like 20 to 30 texts, and all of it was small talk. I don't know how to respond to that. The next text a few hours later was, "Brett, I'm pregnant." Like, what? At this point, my red flag detector is going off, so I try to cut off the relationship by texting, "Okay," and then ghosting. A minute later, "I think it's yours. If you don't come back to take care of me, I'm going to Control-Alt-Delete myself." Well, I just deleted all our messages after that. I still wonder to this day if she was legitimately crazy or if she just got me confused with someone she actually slept with. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Okay, so I'm a nurse, so this is kind of a daily occurrence for me. Especially when you're working in the emergency department and dealing with people who've just walked through the door and you're trying to ascertain whether they're orientated or not. I had too many to list, but one was an elderly mother and her middle-aged son. They seemed completely normal, they often do at first. The mother was getting admitted and the son was getting ready to go home. He pulled me aside and told me his mother likes to spit in a jar on Friday evenings after she watches the news, and if it would be okay for her to do that while in the hospital. Kinda weird, but whatever, she's not hurting anyone. So I said I don't see why not. I'll get her a paper cup or something and she can spit in that tonight after the news. It was a Friday. Oh no, he said, into this jar. He then presented me with what looked like a gross old pickle jar, about a quarter full of spit. It was wrong on so many levels. Let's just say I got a real Norman Bates vibe from those two. Also, outside of work, I went to a house party one New Year's Eve when I was young. There was a chick there that I'd met before and she seemed really cool. They often do at first. Everyone was having fun, but she decided she wanted to go out to a club. She basically throws a tantrum until we all just give in and decided to drive her to this stupid club. She calmed down in the car until we got about halfway there and she just went berserk, saying she doesn't want to go to a club. Why couldn't we have stayed home? Why does she always have to do what everyone else wants? Why are we forcing her to go out when she doesn't want to? Long story short, we turned around and went back home. Once there, she tried to slash the tires of the car, tried to run me and my friend over with her car, and finally ended up crying in the fetal position in the gutter because nobody took her seriously. Right. Talking to this one girl I don't know that well, she says, "I'm an only child." I say, "Oh really? I could never imagine being an only child. What's that like?" "Oh, it gets lonely sometimes, but you get used to it, you know?" So fast forward a few minutes. I say, "I really like your bracelet." "Oh, thanks. My sister gave it to me." In my head, I'm going, okay, something doesn't add up. I'll just ask her. "Oh, really? I thought you were an only child." "Oh, no way. I have 7 siblings." Yep, compulsive liar right there. A former friend of mine was extremely clingy and threatened to not be alive anymore over little things like me not wanting to talk to her 24/7. I called her bluff and I knew she'd never do it. It was just her standard manipulation tool. One day, a conversation about a friend of mine with testicular cancer came up. Turns out she tried to screw him, but he rejected her. She told me that she sincerely wishes that he'd succumb to the cancer. That was the last couple of straws for me. Boyfriend's ex-girlfriend shows up at his house and wants to get back together with him. He declines, of course. He tries to leave for work. She gets in the car with him. He repeatedly tells her to get out, but she refuses. My boyfriend's a pretty chill guy. He doesn't get mad easily. She then physically attacked him while he was driving to work. Luckily, the cops were around the corner and they arrested her. The next day, she called my boyfriend crying on the phone and apologizing for everything. Then the day after that, she called my boyfriend, screaming at him, saying that it's all his fault that she's in jail. After all of this, she left us alone. Thank goodness. I think all we can really do here is hope like hell that she stopped contacting you because she actually went and got professional help. She clearly had some kind of occasional awareness that she was acting out. I worked at a gas station when I was in high school. Every day around the same time for a couple of months, this really cute guy would come in for the restroom and then head out. Eventually, I started being friendlier and he'd stop a second to chat, and eventually he'd ask if I'd like to hear a poem. I'd gush about how great it was and he'd go on his way. The guy was gorgeous, so that clouded my judgment. His poems made no sense and got weirder as time went on. My coworker and best friend urged me to stop being so friendly as he gave her the creeps. I, being 15 and boy crazy, ignored her. This went on for months until one day he ran in with his hair in pigtails and cat-kind of whiskers drawn on his face and locked himself in the bathroom for over an hour. I knocked on the door several times and heard him talking as if on the phone. This was pre-cell phones being normal. I just had a pager. Finally, he busted out, clutching a half-dissolved urinal cake up to his ear and saying, "Someone left me a clue. I finally found it. Farewell." And he ran down the street and we never saw him again. Yeah, so not an eccentric poet. My brother, who's a talented guitar player, told his friends that he got an interview to teach at Juilliard. A week or so later, he posted a video from my mum's living room. He sleeps on her office floor. He was rambling about the interview and that he wasn't offered the job because he used too much profanity. I asked my mum if he had taken any cross-country flights lately, since she would have noticed this mole person mysteriously missing from her home. If he'd in fact been offered an interview. Nope, he was here all week. Why? Yep, that kid had lost it. Oh, and my ex-husband accused me of sleeping with the Deftones. All of them. I'm still not sure what he thought happened, if it was a one-off big spectator event or if I did it systematically. Well, he's on wife number 3 now and is no longer my problem. My flatmate's ex got drunk and mad with him for reasons unknown. She threw up into a bucket, then stared at him in the eye and tipped it all over the lounge floor. Then she tried to throw pizza she had chewed up and spat into her hand. missed him and hit somebody else. Then she put her hand through our window, as in she literally broke the window by shoving her arm through it, and smeared the blood all over the walls and floor, all while saying pathetic stuff about him and being generally awful. This was all in the space of about an hour at 11 a.m. The relationship didn't last long after that. She continued to blackmail him after they'd broken up though. Definitely some issues there, I think. When my smackhead college roommate tried to annoy the girls living in the dorm next door to us by just banging his head on the wall constantly to make them angry with the noise. I still don't even know why he hated them. He just did. My ex-girlfriend legally changed her surname to mine through deed poll after a 1.5-year relationship. Look, I kinda knew they were crazy beforehand, but when my son's mum sent a text message to me threatening to kill my son while he was with her, I now have full custody. When he told me he was a werewolf. When she literally tried to break my wrist at a party for not high-fiving her. Alcohol is like a steroid for crazy. Wrist hurts just thinking about it. I think she just did jujitsu or something because damn. Started digging bits of silver foil out of the tarmac on the side of the road. He had been perfectly sane a few days earlier, and I got to watch his descent, not really realizing what I was viewing until that point. This was in India, and he was Indian but hung out mostly with Westerners, so we'd often talk about spiritual matters. I noticed that these spiritual conversations would get more and more esoteric until I couldn't really get what he was talking about, but I still didn't twig. The day before I found him digging up that silver foil, why is it always foil, I met him on the way home from a bar. He was definitely weird then, properly creepy, and that was when I first realized he had gone a bit mad. He started another long rambling conversation with me again, none of which made sense. It was just the two of us talking beneath a tree on a dark road with nobody else around. He handed me an invisible telephone and told me my mother wanted to talk to me, so I played along, because I was kinda wasted. Then his eyes got wide and he shook his head, placed one hand on each side of my face and said, "No, you never talk to your mother ever again." I was frightened and went home. A couple of days later, he disappeared as he was taken away to the mental hospital, and he only turned up again a few weeks later, shaven-headed. This happened every now and again, apparently. Nowadays, I can spot the signs a lot faster when people are skirting around the borders of madness, and I make damn sure to back off a bit so I don't end up in a position like that again. I had an extremely clingy friend that texted and tried to call me 50 million times a day. Well, I was having a really crappy day and I wasn't in the mood to converse with her at all, and just ignored her. She called the police and told them that she thought I'd tried to self-delete. So that was fun. How to make a bad day a million times worse. It's nice that she cared, not nice that that's how she went about it. There are quite a few more steps that should occur between someone not answering the phone and ringing the police with that theory. I was at a Halloween party several years ago with a secondary or tertiary friend group. You know, the kind. I was kinda friends with some of them and I only barely knew others. But it was a costume party and I didn't have anywhere else to be, so I went. There was a guy who was near to the center of the group that was always a bit screwy. Everyone called him Prison James because he'd been to prison. I'd run into him a few years before when I was in my teens and he offered me $20 to show him my chest. He was at least 20 at the time. Real class act, James. Well, during the party, he pulled out a loaded frickin' piece and started waving it around, saying he could end it all right there or some stuff like that. Two guys managed to get it off him. Now he was angry and running around the house yelling. A third guy stepped in and decided to break down the weapon. So like one guy has all the bullets and one guy gets the actual, thing. Someone else took the clip. Nobody else reacted. They were just like, welp, typical Prison James behavior right there. So that's the day I decided that entire circle was bat crap crazy. A co-worker of mine was in his basement apartment one night, and after coming out of the bathroom, one of his ex-girlfriends was standing in the hallway just staring at him. He immediately told her to get the frick out, as any person would. She followed it up by pulling out a steak knife from her back pocket and swinging it around, making some pretty crazy statements. He managed to get the knife off her, and then she pulled out another one. This girl had a pack of steak knives in her pocket. She then proceeded to shank herself in the neck. I think that's when he realized she was pretty off. She survived. They're dating now. Godspeed to that guy. That's when I realized my coworker was also crazy. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.